Aloha, Awina la, kako. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to our Maui Planning Commission meeting of Tuesday, November 26, 2024, regarding the South Maui Community Plan. Yes, we're getting started a little bit late. I will acknowledge that we just got off of our regular meeting not too long ago, and everybody needed a little bit of time for nourishment and loosening up to get our, bodies and brains ready to go again for the next few hours on this very important topic. I'm standing right now just because I need to exercise my legs a little bit just from sitting for the last 6+ hours. So Director, if you could do roll call, please.
Mahalo, Chair. Commissioner Hibolito.
Good afternoon, all. I'm in my office alone in Kahoga.
Mahalo. Commissioner Dikos.
Yeah, aloha, everyone. Still on a boat, Pearl Harbor. Probably transitioning around 5:30 to my vehicle. And I have maybe a dozen staff coming in and out of the cabin.
Mahalo. Commissioner Kealoha.
I am still here at home in my office and alone.
Mahalo. Commissioner Lindsay.
Bless you, by the way.
Aloha mai kako. I'm here
Eola.
myself.
Whoa. Okay. I think she said she's alone. Commissioner Ward.
Hello, everybody, and I'm still in the room.
Nice. Glad to have you. Vice Chair Thompson.
Aloha and good afternoon, all.
Mahalo. Chair Thayer.
Yes, I am here. Thank you, Director. So on our agenda today, we have unfinished business picking up from our last meeting, specifically Section 3, the growth framework. Within that subsection 3.3, sub area 2, North Kihei. And we had discussed last week under section 3.4, areas of change, the Central Maui Base Yard and Mauka North Kihei. I think before we get going, the department has a couple of things to say.
Mahalo, Chair. Just a really quick point of clarification to something that I said last time we were together. There was a discussion of potentially adding some additional industrial land to an area outside of the urban growth boundary. At that time, I believe I stated that it would be improper. And I will say, before I say what I'm about to say, that the planning department does not recommend designating areas outside of the urban growth boundary. However, there is a provision within 2.80B090, I think it's F, that allows you, if you choose to do that, we would have to, you can make that recommendation, but you would also need to make a concurrent recommendation to amend the Maui Island plan. So there's a provision within 2.80B to do that. We have not done this before, so it would be a fun and new challenge for all of us. And also, once this item gets to council, we would need to take up the Maui Island Plan amendment before the council could finalize the community plan, because the Maui Island Plan amendment would have to go first. And I think, I'm not sure if Mr. Hopper is online at this point and can confirm what I'm saying, but we did confer prior to this conversation, and this was what we determined what the path would be. So should the commission choose to designate areas urban designation outside of the existing urban growth boundary, they would also need to make a recommendation to change the Maui Island plan to include that area in the urban growth boundary. And then once that got to planning commission or to council, everything got to council, it would need to then go the Maui Island Plan amendment would have to go first, and then the South Maui Community Plan could go second. So just wanted to make that clarification. Appreciate all of you for your patience as we're learning things here, and happy to answer any questions that you have. And also, I believe Mr. Hopper is on if you have any questions for him.
Thank you, Director. So commissioners, are you all clear on what she was saying? Do you have any clarifying questions? Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director. Just to jog my memory, this was about the recycling expansion. Is that the area that we're discussing?
Jackie is vigorously nodding her head, and I believe, yeah, so it's area that is south of the existing industrial area. We can look at a map, I believe there's yeah, go ahead.
There's two different industrial areas that were being proposed for expansion outside of the urban growth boundary. One is in the central area near the Raceway Park, and the other one is in Keokea near the Lipoa development.
And so for purposes of today's discussion, the only one that you would consider is the one that's in Pu'unene right now, or Pu'ule'ehunui.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other commissioner questions, just to be clear on what the director just told us? Everybody good? Okay. Director?
I apologize. There's one other item. I believe this was kind of an error in our agenda, and I just want to bring it to everyone's attention. So today we are talking about subarea 2, which is North Kihei, and the areas of change associated with that area are Central Maui Base Yard and Mauka North Kihei. Item 3 on your agenda under B1, B4, 3, if you follow me on that, says Central Kihei. I recommend that the commission do not take that up since we don't have subarea 3 on our agenda for today. So I just wanted to make that clear. That is all from the department, from me.
Okay. Any clarifying questions there from the commission? Everybody straight on what's before us today. Okay. Seeing no further questions, we can go into public testimony.
Thank you, Chair. We have 3 in person and then we'll go on to online. So first person is Paula Kalanikau, followed by Mike Hill and then Janice Hill.
Aloha. Oinala.
Aloha.
My name is Paula Kalanikau. I'm a resident of Kulakai, also known as Kihei. I've lived there for the last 61 years. So I have definitely seen a growth in the area. My concern right now is regarding the section you were just discussing. I was more concerned about the infrastructure in that area and how are you into developing that section and the roadway that comes into play. Involving also the traffic. And water usage. I mean, I'm asking to see how your establishment or how have you established this into your plan? And then if I may go further, because I don't feel that enough of the community exposure has been done for the community. I am also inquiring about a public hearing.
30 seconds remaining.
Thank you. So that is my concern right now. We need a public hearing so that we do get more information or question from within our community, which is Kulakai. And right now, my motto here that I would like to share with all of you
Time.
is Uamao Kea o Kainai Kapono. And I believe you understand what I'm talking about. Mahalo.
Could you expand a little bit more, just what you got stopped on there? You wanted to have a public hearing about the water and traffic?
Yes, I think, we in the South Maui area, as well as the Wailea 670, are still in a quandary as to how we're gonna establish our infrastructure there. So my concern yesterday with the council is, for one thing, is traffic, because right now we have just 2 corridors getting out of South Kihei and Wailea. In my experience growing up in that area, we've had several emergency exits that we had to go through, and there were only 2. So we've had tsunami warnings that we had to evacuate. We've had fire warnings that we had to evacuate. So now we're in the same quandary as Lahaina, to be honest with you. We have only 2 exits. And during the past emergencies that I've experienced during my time with my kamalis there, my children, it's very terrifying because we come into a gridlock, honestly with you. And people are panicking because there's only 2 roads out, and we will come into a gridlock on Veterans Highway, also known as Mokulele. You come on down to South Kihei Road. It's a smaller road. People are backed up already because they come to a gridlock again over there. People from Mauka is trying to get to Makai, and Makai is trying to get out. It's terrifying. It's very terrifying. I lived there to see it with my own eyes. I have to get out of my subdivision, and I can't even get out because people are using those areas to exit. They're using Kenoleo, they're using Ohukai, they're using Lipoa, they're using wherever they can get out. It is awful. And I'm just begging you people to really consider. First of all, we need to learn to save lives. We need to learn to save lives as a priority. And that comes into play with what we're talking about right now. We're talking about traffic. We're talking about how we're going to get out. How many? 28,000, almost 30,000 people are down there. And they want to build more. Of course, housing is very important because we're in dire need of low housing income homes. And my heart goes out to the people that are suffering and struggling towards this. But we're also going to think, how are we going to incorporate the urgency of our exit?
Can I ask you one question too? Do you think that, because they proposed a new fire department, do you think that'll be a help there too?
Are you questioning? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, so they proposed a new fire station. In fact, I think that was on our
Yeah.
last meeting for a couple acres. And do you think that would be helpful?
Well, currently we have a fire station, in what between Wale and South Maui station there now. And then we have one Waimahai High by Kalama Park. So that is helpful, you know, and they're working their very best to make our place a safe place. I gotta say that. We also are, I understand they just hired some firemen, which has expanded some protection for part of Maui County. But I seen the fire right above our highway, and I was terrified when they had the Lahaina and Kula fire, because it did go down to Kihei, right above where you all talking about in that site. And if that wind, which was like 75 miles an hour, if that wind, because we couldn't get help from the helicopter, remember, because the wind was so strong, they couldn't fly any flights in. They had to get Oahu military out here 7 p.m. in the evening. But with the wind blowing so hard, thank God that Opala or anything didn't fly across the street, and that would be the end of that part of Kihei, definitely. And Maui Meadows was in threat also. So I'm pleading with the commissioners, even if it needs to go have a hearing so people can, not probably, we can kaku, meaning intertwine ideas to help to make things pono. That's all I ask. Because I'm so stuck on the model that we have in Hawaii. Ua mau ke ia o ka ina I ka pono. This life, yeah, the life of the land shall be perpetuated in righteousness. And we need to do what is right. This is our motto. We need to do what is pono. And that's all I ask, please. Commissioners, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Hold on, there might be more questions for you.
Okay.
Commissioners online, any further questions for the testifier? Okay, Commissioner Ward, any questions? Okay, I do want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said your concerns are related to a particular proposed development, or is this for the whole entire South Maui region?
Yeah, I think, you know, the proposal will fall into place once we have our infrastructure in order. And that covers the whole 9 yards.
And mainly making sure that infrastructure is in place for people to be able to evacuate safely in times of, wildfire, tsunami,
Yes,
or something
definitely
like that.
tsunami. Because we're in a tsunami in that area. I don't know how many people are aware of that, but it is a tsunami in that area.
So you talked a lot about roadway development and traffic. You mentioned one thing about water use. Was there anything specific about?
Water, yeah, it comes into part of the infrastructure, I guess, but we are in water limits right now. We cannot use water in South Kihei because of the restriction, and I'm sure Kihei is not the only one. They're the whole people that have the aquifer from Iao are affected by it. So where's the water coming from otherwise, you know, with the development? Where are we getting all of this if we're on restrictions? And we have a weather problem. We have all these weather problems where we're not getting enough water into our system as we once did. And as I mentioned before, this is only an island that we're on. We're on a little Maui island. We're not in a continent where there's more resources. You understand what I'm coming from? Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Appreciate it.
Any further questions? Okay, yes, mahalo for being here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, next testifier is Mike Hill to be followed by Janice Hill.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Michael Hill, and I've lived on Maui for a little over 30 years. I just want to express, I guess, a concern over, generally in the overdevelopment of the area of South Maui, and it's not happening only in South Maui, but from what I've been made aware is that the Maui Planning Commission actually did a study over a period of 2 years on projecting what the population increase and the need for housing units would be for the next 20 years. Those numbers for housing units came out somewhere between a low estimate of 800 and a high of 1,700. But from what I understand right now, there's over 7,000 housing units that are in some stages of the process. Some have been already approved. Some are still in the planning stage. But if you add up all of these big possible developments that are out there right now, they come to, 6 or 7 times what was projected was going to be needed. The other concern is a lot of those houses are luxury homes. Some of them are going to be multi-million-dollar homes. They're not going to be for local people to live in. There's some areas that are promising affordable housing. We still have to wait and see how that turns out. But to also get back to the issue that Paul was addressing would be for infrastructure for that many new homes and businesses. Again, right now we have gridlock on the Pilani Highway at certain times of the day. If 7,000 new housing units were put in that area, that could be a potential another 14,000 cars if you just assume 2 cars per household using those same roadways. So again, the concern about is the infrastructure, where the water is going to come from, where the sewer is going to go, what road improvements can be made and who's going to pay for those, what new schools are going to be required, who's going to pay for that. All of those things, I guess, in general, concerned about seem to be already stretching the limits of the resources. So if there's that much expansion, I think it's just going to be too much. So what I would hope is that somebody, and I don't know that you have the authority or if it's the council, but somebody would be able to say, none of these developments are going to be approved unless they can show where
30 seconds.
resources are going to come from. And so I guess that's, my main point is just a concern about too much development in that area.
Thank you. Question from Commissioner Dicos.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Hill. Can you restate the numbers of the anticipated houses and what resource you got that from?
Well, I actually got that from a presentation that was made. Actually, it was at a Maui Tomorrow meeting, and it was a presentation given by Dick Mayer. And he actually had a chart that showed that information. And basically what that showed was that, the Planning Commission had done the study, and that was their projection for the next 20 years until 2045. Now, again, I can't say, personally that I saw those documents and statistics, but that's where that came from.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Any further questions for the testifier? Okay. Are there specific projects that you're concerned about, or is it, everything across South Maui as a whole? Okay, speaking to the mic.
I actually think there are some proposed projects right now that I think that even the planning commission has approved or is in the process of approving. Look at some of the documents for today's agenda that I wouldn't object to. But then there's some I think are going to be horrible projects if they go forward. So again, just in general, I think there's some good ones, there's some bad ones, but in general, there's just too many.
I don't know, would you be able to say which ones you think are good and which ones you think are bad?
Well, right now, I think that one of the ones I think that you may be going to be addressing is the Piilani Promenade, or that started off as, well, the history. It started off as light industrial. It's gone through all kinds of different reiterations and reclassifications. And I think that you were going to recommend that it be classified as a small town center. To me, that seems like a good use for that particular property and probably in a good place. Some of the other projects I'm not as familiar with, but we all just testified at the council hearing last night or yesterday morning that about the Wailea 670 project. And, some of it sounds wonderful and, like new fire station, of course, new fire stations and police stations are always nice. That doesn't really help with a major evacuation on the Piilani Highway. But some of the things they're promising, I'm just not sure if they're going to follow through with. In fact, some of the wording that the council was considering in Bill 172 or 171, I'm sorry, seems to be wording that would almost give them more leeway to get around some of the conditions that they were given going through that process. Now, according to them, the project's been approved, but they want to change the conditions. And so that's the kind of things that I'm still concerned about that I would hate to see happen.
Thank you. Appreciate that input. Next testifier.
Next testifier is Janice Hill, to be followed by Leilani Pomano.
Aloha, Wina Lakako. My name is Janice Hill. I've lived in Hawaii for 57 years. I lived and taught in Kihei for 37 years at Kihei Elementary, Lokilani Intermediate, and Kamali'i Elementary. And I've seen the growth. And one thing I testified about 5 years ago was that instead of Keikioka Aina in Kihei, we would soon have Keikioka Concrete. I am in favor of amending the island plan in all of its phases, in all of the developments that have not already been approved. My assumption is that the R&T park has been a done deal. They're already going to build enough homes in that area for what was projected to be needed, even without 670, even without any of the McKenna Wailea things, even without any of the North Kihei things. And I don't know anything about the Mokulele Highway thing by the Humane Society or car park or whatever it is. I don't know where they're going to get the water for that. But my concerns, again, are infrastructure. And I appreciate you giving Paula more time, because yesterday we wanted to renege our time for 3 minutes down to 2 minutes. And then they spent 20 minutes in the council arguing about that and voting on it 3 times till we still didn't get our 3 minutes. So I appreciate you allowing her more time. I can conclude really soon. None of these developments have addressed properly the water sources, nor the sewage, nor the roads, nor the exit plan if there's a fire or a flood or a tsunami or any other kind of disaster. So I propose a moratorium on all development that hasn't already been approved until we can get a public hearing. Because it seemed like the council yesterday, 5 out of 4 of them did not really care what we had to say, and they wanted it done in a minute. And so I'm glad that you're giving us a little more time than the 3 minutes I know we're supposed to speak. However, we don't need any more luxury housing. We only need residential workforce housing. And so all the promises that these developers have given us to comply with their permits for the luxury
Ladies,
dwellings for non-resident millionaires, it's not pono. And I agree with Paula. O mauki o kaini pono. And pono can mean many things. Yesterday, Paula said it doesn't mean richness. It means righteousness. And to me, righteousness also means right useness. And right now, I say enough already. Mahalo.
Mahalo for testimony. 1 second. Are there any questions from the commission for the testifier? The question on seeking a public hearing, would that, so something different than what's going on here, you're saying?
Oh, absolutely different. For example, a lot of this stuff that's been going on is behind closed doors where the public don't even know about it, versus allowing a public hearing. And so far as I know, and I could be very wrong about this because the Maui News is now only once a week and we don't read it that, anymore. So to me, we need a moratorium until we can figure this out. And again, what I was saying, so far as I know, we've had maybe 3 public hearings in Kula about the water and the fires and an endless amount of hearings in Lahaina because that's so necessary right now. But we haven't had any hearings about these proposed projects. And to me, I think there are 8, and don't make me list them because I've run out of time. So if you ask South Maui, North Maui, I say enough already to all of it because we've got enough already in the R&T park, and we don't even know where that road's going to go. Are they going to continually POA all the way up country and have that be the collector road that they've promised for 30 years and can't decide North Kihei, Mid Kihei, South Kihei, where are they going to put the road? We've been waiting for that road forever. It could be one possible exit for an emergency. But so far, the joke is all we've got in South Kihei is we jump in that water and swim to Kaho'olawe unless they build us a bridge because there's no way out. The end of Pi'ilani Highway ends at Wailea. Who's going to pay for that to continue to all the development down in McKenna? I don't know the answer. So I'm against it. Thanks.
No, thank you. And I just, thinking about this question, because I'm curious how you found out about this meeting.
Online because Paula and I tried to get on WebEx last week to a planning commission meeting and all the pilikia involved in some codes and this and that meant we better show up in person because we can't even get on WebEx to testify. We're a little bit too old for that. I'm an old dog. This is a new trick. So here we are in person without our 15 copies of testimony because mostly we just don't have it.
No, yeah. No, I'm glad you're here, and I'm a huge proponent for as much public testimony as possible. So I'm glad you're here today, and it's been great to hear from the 3 of you. And so, just for your sake, so we've been doing these meetings almost every 2 weeks at this time, and we're going over the South Maui Community Plan, which, as you I think are aware, it's for all of South Maui, but this is like a great place for you to voice your opinions, because I don't know that we've heard from anybody like you folks previously.
It's too hard to do.
Yes.
We finally figured it out that, hey, they're going to have a real meeting here. And we were told that, hey, most everybody's going to be online anyway. We thought we might be the only ones in the room. And then we wouldn't even know how to do this. So I appreciate that so much, but we need a public hearing because we know hundreds of people in South Maui that would be willing to testify, but they don't know how to do all this either. And they're busy working. 10 o'clock at the council yesterday, they're working. All our kids are working. I have 2 daughters that are working. They'd love to come testify. My 5 grandchildren live Waikapu and Maui Meadows. We all care, but we're retired and we finally figured this out today. And we were pretty nervous about doing it, just like we were really nervous about yesterday. So thank you for listening.
Sure.
Mahalo.
Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Chair. So you weren't aware of the South Maui Community Plan Advisory Group that went on for about a year.
Was it during COVID?
No, it
Oh.
was, I'm gonna get my years wrong,
20.
22 to 23. Is that right?
2022 to year 2023 South Advisory Plan.
So we met every week for every Wednesday for about 4 hours. So I just was more inquiring if you had not heard about that because it was a long process. But we certainly were accepting testimony and things of that nature. So to me, it's important to hear that if you did not know about it, that as other regions do their community plans, that we help suggest alternative ways maybe for more awareness.
If we had heard about it, we would have been there.
Yeah, so going forward, because we are going to have at least meetings through February probably on this topic. So it'll be, this location probably at this time, 3 to 7 on the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month
Mhm.
that we'll be going over this. And so, yeah, I think our in-person meetings will be here. We might have one or, no more in South Maui. Okay, yeah, so all the meetings on this will be here. Again, the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month, but we only have one in December. And then January, we'll have 2 meetings. In February, we should have 2 meetings on this topic. So, tell everybody, that if they can also submit written testimony. So if they want to, put a letter together or even bullet points, you don't have to, make it pretty necessarily, just whatever thoughts you can put down on paper and email that to the planning department if you know how to do that.
We'll figure all that out. Right now, we're just enough already. And so what I really need is to know whose Kuleana it is for us to apply for a public hearing.
Well, this effectively is taking the place of a public hearing. So this would be the time for the community to do it like what you're doing right now, stand up and provide testimony and share your thoughts. And this body, the Planning Commission, will do our best to incorporate all your thoughts into our draft of this plan that will be fed up to County Council, and then County Council will take our recommendations and the recommendations from the advisory committee that Commissioner Ward said met previously, and Council will have the ultimate deliberation and putting into action or enacting the plan.
Mahalo for that, because yesterday there were so many testifiers that they have to continue that council meeting to Monday afternoon.
Yeah, so it's kind of related but separate because that was specific to Wailea 670, right?
Correct.
Which is in South Maui. So there are some policies within this South Maui community plan that may affect like the character of how that development takes shape and what it looks like and things. But as far as, what happens specifically with Wailea 670, which was what Council was discussing, yes, that's going to be continue with them.
And separate. So how could we get information about the Mokulele development?
I'll let the director speak.
I'm not sure exactly what development you're referring to, but I do want to tack on to your original question that if you have a recommendation for some sort of action, such as a moratorium or that kind of item, I would work directly with your council member for South Maui and get time with them. You could also talk to any council member, right? They're elected at large, and so I can't promise that they'll all return your calls, but you're certainly welcome to reach out to them because they can originate things like that. So I wanted to just address that. If you can, I'm not allowed to ask this, but can I have her clarify which project she's talking about?
Oh yeah, the Mokulele project, yeah.
Well, I don't know what it's called, but I've heard all kinds of iterations. That it's across the street from the race park, kind of near the Humane Society. So I don't even know where that is.
Yeah.
Does it mean, and who owned it? Was it A&B? Is it Mahipono that has it now?
It could be so there's a couple different projects that are occurring in that area. So the state has responsibility for a big project that's Pulehunui. And that project might be what you're talking about. That's a jail site and some industrial and a bunch of other things. There's many iterations of that. I do understand that HCDA, the Hawaii Community Development Authority, is I believe they're taking the lead on that coordination of that project, so you can contact them directly. But if it's a different project, there's also some industrial additional industrial expansion? Is that something further north that's closer to the Humane Society? Maybe not. So the other project, yeah, then the other project is the DHHL, Department of Hawaiian Homeland's Pulehunui project, which is just a little bit south.
Well, that's already been approved, and I'm totally in favor of anything Hawaiian Homes.
Yeah, so I'm not sure which project you're referring to, and you're certainly welcome to talk to me when we have a break and I can try to narrow it down for you, but that is the extent of the information that I have that I can provide.
Okay, so for a little bit of breaking down the promenade, and then I guess it would be Kulani Hakoi area near the high school. There would be the old Haleakala Ranch and the I'm trying to think of the name of the other section, but I would be in favor of affordable housing in that area because the high school is already Mauka of the highway up in there, so. Mahalo.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, oh. Were there any further questions for the testifier? Okay. Again, thank you for your testimony and thank you for being here.
Okay, next testifier is Leilani Pomano, followed by Cal Chipchase.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Leilani Pomano with Pacific Rim Land. First, I'd like to say that actually apologize because we have not been involved in the community plan process until now, and particularly for this parcel that I had submitted previous testimony for, which is parcel 38008005. It doesn't have a name. We don't really have many project plans right now on it, but what our vision is that we would expand the existing Pulehunui Industrial Park. And that location is south of the existing Pulehunui Industrial Park between the cement and the quarry, the existing cement and quarry that's there now. So, and the second thing I want to say is thank you for the director for providing that clarification on that provision in the code 2.80B because that was going to be my testimony, that I believe that the county code contemplated this particular issue of us being involved a little late to the game and trying to get a designation for industrial. So I guess I'd just like to say, if you guys would consider the industrial designation, we think it's an appropriate area for heavy industrial. And to what we had found in our Pulehunui Industrial Phase 1, or what we'd call our Phase 1, is that many many owner users are the ones that purchased the lots. So there's a lot of owner users, right, or users right now, or businesses that rent or lease their industrial spaces. And just think about it from a homeowner's perspective as an analogy. All this time you're renting your home, and it would be so nice to be able to have your ownership of a home, just like for businesses. So we ask that if you would consider changing that designation to, right now it's just agriculture, to industrial. Thank you for your consideration. Appreciate that.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions for the testifier? Commissioner Lindsay.
Is it a prime agricultural land?
No, it's not.
What grade is it?
Oh, shucks. I don't know, but I do know it's not in important ag lands or prime agriculture lands.
Okay, and it is currently being used as?
It's vacant.
Okay, and the area mostly surrounding it is also vacant?
Well, the area surrounding it is heavy industrial right now. That's west, and then east of it is the cement quarry.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
No more questions, Chair.
Further questions for the testifier? I have a follow-up question. So this is conceived to be industrial lots for sale, recognizing that many businesses are renting or leasing?
Correct.
Okay. But you don't have any plans beyond that, like how many lots you would do or how large they would be or things like that?
Not at all. Unfortunately, we're so new to this opportunity for this land that we haven't created our master plan at this point. We just found that right now you all are going through this community plan update process, and we thought that we'd take this opportunity to present it.
So you own this land?
Not quite yet, actually.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So you may own this land.
Yes, very close.
And in anticipation of that is why you're seeking this to be industrial.
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Oh, Commissioner Ward?
When you're saying that you're close, do you have kind of a general timeline of, I mean, you're weeks away or 6 months away?
From purchasing, yes, we are a month away.
And more as asking just to understand timelines.
Oh, yeah, so, yeah, understood.
Okay. Any additional questions from the commission? All right. Seeing none, mahalo for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next person is Chip Chase, and then we'll go online. Will be Randy Wagner and then Robin Knox.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners, Cal Chip Chase. I'll focus my testimony on the promenade. I submitted written testimony, and in that testimony, I broke down the history of the prior approvals, including the land use approval and the settlement agreement reached with Maui Tomorrow and various other entities regarding the plan, Honuula's plan to develop 250 affordable units in the promenade area on its 13 acres of promenade. As you recall, that was opposed by Maui Tomorrow and others. We've reached a settlement that we would follow the previously existing site plan. Any changes to that site plan require the agreement by Maui Tomorrow and a host of other folks. The next part of it of my letter explains why we believe the small town center can be utilized to facilitate residential development despite those limitations, working within the existing approvals that we have, including that settlement agreement. And so we continue to advocate that the only way to develop residential housing in that area is to designate it as small town center, that aligns with all the existing approvals. And with the settlement agreement, that avoids also the takings issue that would arise if no economically viable uses were allowed. If the area is designated residential, no economically viable uses will be allowed, and I believe it would be a taking. I wanted to add to that a statement to address the concern that the developer really just wants to develop commercial units there. It says residential, but in fact wants to designate or do residential because that's more profitable. With respect, that's a profound misunderstanding of the economics of Maui. It is not more profitable to do residential in that area. It is far more demand for residential, as we all know. Whatever studies previously existed, we are clearly in a housing crisis, as the council study of maybe 3 years ago, 2 years ago indicated. So to address that concern, but still remain consistent with the zoning and other approvals that we have, I would propose a text limitation to accompany the plan map. And what I would offer up is the following. Project areas shall develop as many residential units as allowed by existing approvals and other applicable laws, up to a maximum of 80% residential and 20% commercial and industrial mixed use density.
30 seconds.
That's all I have.
Questions for the testifier? Commissioner Dicos.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chip Chase. The 250 homes, this is totally separate from Honuaula. Is that correct?
It's a separate land area, Commissioner. That's right. In addition to the 670 acres at the end of Piilani Highway, Honuaula owns 13 acres in the promenade area of the property. So separate from the balance of the development that's owned by the company for which Harry Lake works, Honuaula owns 13 acres Mauka, on a Mauka corner of that property. Originally, the plan was to put 250 affordable units on that 13 acres. That was opposed and the settlement was reached as I described. The Honuaula project will develop all of its affordable housing on site.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome, Commissioner.
Further questions for the testifier? Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your testimony. The statement that you had just provided is your offering of the 80 to maximum of 80, 20%. Has that been submitted as written testimony?
I don't believe that I have submitted that specific phrase as written testimony. The concept, I think, is in, but I was trying to think of how I would phrase that. That's my proposal to you, and look forward to any feedback you can offer here, or if you'd like me to submit it in a different way, I'm glad to.
If you could submit that in writing, that would be helpful.
Will do.
Thank you.
Vice Chair?
And thank you, Mr. Chip Chase. So how do we ensure that you guys would actually do that and not just abandon it all and put up a bunch of Toys R Us or something?
Well, I have to go back in time and make Toys R Us a going company again.
It would actually function.
But assuming I got that time machine, the text language that I proposed would do that. And so we would be obliged as part of compliance with the community plan to develop as much residential as allowed by our existing entitlements and otherwise by law. When you go in for subdivision approval, compliance with the community plan is one of the items that you need to address. And so the way I phrased it was as mandatory. I know we've had a lot of discussion over shells and mays, and sometimes shells are appropriate and often mays are. This is one of the few times in a community plan I would advocate for a shell so that you can ensure that that compliance will be maintained through future subdivisions.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, we'll go online. So Randy Wagner followed by Robin Knox.
Randy Wagner, are you online? Is she online? Oh. Can you hear us? Oh,
Okay, there we go.
Oh, there
It
we go.
takes a really long time for this system to allow someone to unmute and to start the video.
Good to know.
But here I am. What I wanted to talk about today specifically is traffic. I live in Kihei. I don't think many of you all live in Kihei, but I wanted to describe on Friday, I picked up my grandkids at Kamali'i and I drove back to Central Kihei on the Piilani Highway, and I had to wait for 3 traffic signals at Lipoa Street. I ended up going up towards the Maui High Tech area and coming back down just to get through the signal. So there's clearly a problem. There's nothing going on every day at that time of day at 2:30. It backs up half mile, a mile, and you just have to wait. So the places on the highway where it backs up are the places where commercial is. It backs up at Lipoa, at Pi'ikea, and Ohukai. And so my wish is that there be no more commercial on the highway. And the developer of Piilani Promenade states that they want the commercial to support the residential area. So there's no need to draw traffic on and off the highway if you're just trying to support that residential area. And I just heard Mr. Chip Chase say they would propose an 80-20 relationship. That's still 16 acres of commercial. It's still a lot of commercial, but it should be located in the center of the residential area so people can all walk to it and not on the highway. It is just, if you approve commercial on the highway, you are exacerbating a really problematic situation already. And I know in the original discussion, when the ranch was first changing their ag zoning to the light industrial, the talk was that there would be a stone wall and monkey pod trees along the highway. So I don't believe the argument that residential is a problem on the highway is a real argument. You can set it back. You can have that 150-foot buffer that allows for a bike path and a walking path. And there's already residential up and down the highway that is buffered. So I think that if there's going to be commercial there, it should definitely be determined by the commissioners and by the planning department that it should not be on the highway.
30
There's
seconds.
no need for it to be on the highway. You know, if you're trying to keep people from crossing the highway, have them go be internal where they can walk to a commercial center, where they can buy their groceries or whatever it is they want to get their massage, but not have it attract tourists. Tourists drive up and down that highway. You're just going to make more congestion. And it's already shown that's where the congestion is. So that's a big traffic issue. And then my other comment is in the North Kihei Mauka, that road should be complete all the way to Veterans Highway from Lipoa Street before any occupancy is increased in that area. And I support what Paula and Ms. Hill said, that the infrastructure is really critical, and I would ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Wagner, for your testimony. So I can't look at the screen and talk to the microphone, so I'm going to turn away from you. My question is around the highway that you're suggesting get built in advance. Why would it only go to Lipoa?
Well, it shouldn't just go to Lipoa, but it should actually go from Lipoa through all the way to Kanani to the signal there, where they're proposing a light industrial, where the police station is. I think that would alleviate a lot of congestion as people could split off farther south. Ultimately, I think there needs to be a parkway that is, you know, Mauka of all of Kihei, a bypass. And, you know, I totally agree that all this development south is going to be too much of a burden. It's already a problem, but that needs to be addressed farther south. I think that we're just saying it goes to Lipoa because that is for that part of North Kihei. It would enable, it's just sort of like, okay, let's see what we can at least get. Can we get that much to get out of Kihei from central Kihei anyway? Because there's a lot of traffic that originates in the center of Kihei. It's a very densely populated part of town. So if you could go up Lipoa and out to the Veterans Highway, it would be huge.
Completely agree. Would it be fair to say that you would support from Lipoa down further into South Maui?
Yes, I'm saying, yeah, I already see where it could go. It would go from there to the Kanani Road intersection where there's already a signal.
Thank you.
And there's already some road.
Right.
And that would get it even further south.
That's all.
Okay. Further questions from the commission for the testifier? Commissioner Dikos.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your testimony. So what you're describing sounds like small commercial uses that serve the immediate neighborhood. Does that sound right? Okay.
Yes, and that's what the developer has presented as their desire. So I don't know why it's located on the highway in the planning department's proposal.
Okay, that's the description of residential zoning. So I just wanted to make sure that aligns with what you're talking about.
Right. I'm totally for residential zoning with only neighborhood centers. However, if the cards fall that the planning department gets their way and they change it to small town center, which I don't agree with, and if Mr. Chip Chase is offering up his 20/80 ratio, that 20 should not be on the highway.
Okay, and you also mentioned neighborhood center, but that's commercial uses that service neighborhoods up to 1/4 mile away. So you would be
Yeah.
fine with that. Okay.
Absolutely. That would be the ideal
Okay.
for the
Thank you.
community, for the benefit of the community and for the ability of the highway to function as best it can, given its limited state.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Any further questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, thank you again for your testimony.
Okay,
Thank
next
you.
testifier. Oh, sorry. Next testifier is Robin Knox to be followed by Johan Law.
I'm trying to stop there.
She's online. What does that say?
I was not planning to testify, just watching.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we'll move on to Johan Law.
Aloha, Johan Lau testifying on behalf of myself. So I am gonna agree with Cal Chip Chase. I'm gonna disagree with Randy Wagner and maybe agree with Leilani. So I don't know what exact area Leilani was referring to, but in general, I think we do need a lot more industrial space on Maui. There's a lot of people who I think would have businesses if they could have businesses that are, stuff like carpentry or fixing cars, stuff like that. There's a lot of people who they just can't afford the industrial space that exists. One concern I have is Puehu Gulch flows into Keolia Pond, I believe. So a buffer is going to be really important to protect from like industrial runoff. Several testifiers brought up traffic, and I just want to introduce, or I guess bring up a concept that is you can reduce traffic by having more housing. And a lot of the traffic, so I actually just drove back to South Kihei from Wailuku, and there's a lot of traffic going the other way, and that's people who work in those resorts driving to Kahului and Wailuku. And the more housing we have here in South Maui, the less traffic there's going to be if it's affordable and it's actually lived in by people who work in those resorts. So affordable housing extremely important. Market rate housing is going to be mostly investments at this point, so that's not going to have much impact on traffic either way. But the more people we have in Kihei, the better, I think, actually living here and working here. But the same thing applies for Piolani Promenade. I think 80-20 split, if it's actually 80-20. And I was kind of confused about the 80% maximum because it seemed like it should be 80% minimum. So maybe Chip Chase misspoke. But I do also think that those kind of commercial or related usage should be on the highway because I don't think people should be living where there's like constant road noise. What does matter is how those roads are connected.
30
So
seconds.
you can have commercial along the highway, but then the road that actually connects to it is connecting to the other, like the existing streets that would reduce the traffic concern, I think. But I think that was all I wanted to cover. Yeah, mahalo.
Mahalo for your testimony. Any questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, thank you again.
And thank you, Chair. That's the end of the list.
Okay, is there anybody else online who wishes to testify?
Hi, sorry, Chair, I forgot to hit enter to send my testimony request, but
Okay.
I just did.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Just to finish my thought there, anybody else online wishing to testify, please write your name in the chat to notify staff and we can get you on the list. Otherwise, we will be closing public testimony shortly. But Mr. Perez, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Aloha, Commissioners. Albert Perez here, and I just want to say quickly that we do support truly affordable housing. Hulelehua, McKenna Resort, we got 60 extra affordable homes there. Waikapu Country Town, we supported, Haleopi'ike and Kihei. We gave a whole list of sites to the mayor. We're working with the mayor, and we're doing research on increasing the pool of permanently affordable housing. So we just don't like anybody trying to put housing in fire or flood hazard zones or to reduce the number of affordable housings that they're proposing. I submitted written testimony, and I'm going to go into that a little bit, but I also read Mr. Chipchase's testimony for this meeting, and he says that residential use would be permitted in small town center because it's permitted in the Maui County Light Industrial Zone. This reflects a misunderstanding of the State Land Use Commission decision and order from 1995, specifically Condition 15, that petitioner shall develop the property in substantial compliance with the representations made to the commission. And they did not propose residential development at the time. That's the problem. So, and they said in 2013 that both the mega mall proposal and the residential proposal would violate the 1995 decision and order. They reiterated that in paragraph F of the 2020 stipulation that we all signed. It would violate conditions 5 and 15 and 17. So once again, residential use is not currently allowed on these 88 acres, but the community plan designation will not change that regardless of whether it's small town center or residential. But if the community plan designates the property as residential, we will advocate for the Land Use Commission decision in order to be modified to allow residential, which is what the South Maui CPAC voted to support. And we invite Pi'ilani Promenade and Honolulu Partners to join us in that effort. Thank you.
Mahalo for your testimony. Any questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none. Mahalo again for your testimony.
Okay, aloha.
Anybody else sign up to testify? Okay, last call for testimony. Testimony will be closing in 3, 2, 1. Public testimony is closed. Commissioners, temperature check. Do you need a 5-minute break before we start deliberation? I am seeing some nodding of yes. Commissioner Dicos, is that a? Okay. Shall we say, or I guess 10 minutes, 4:30? Come back at 4:30?
That's good.
Okay, sounds good. See you then.
Oh, yeah. The blood back in it.
Exercise snack.
Yes.
Commissioner Decos, I just want to say I applaud your commitment to the commission. Because you're always like in transit or on a boat or something. That's all. Then you can start the meeting, Chair. Sorry about that.
Nope. Thank you. Appreciate the camaraderie among commissioners. It's good to have full support. Appreciate you all. So welcome back everybody to our Maui Planning Commission meeting of Tuesday, November 26, 2024. regarding the South Maui Community Plan. We have just closed public testimony, and so we can resume our work that we started at our previous meeting on sub-area 2, North Kihei, and the areas of change, specifically the Central Maui Base Yard and Mauka North Kihei. So,
Chair, before you continue, your camera's off.
oh, our camera is not showing.
Please stand by.
Showing now, I
yes,
think so.
yes.
Okay. All right. So kind of like we did at our last meeting, we went broad and then specific. So looked at the whole sub area 2 North Kihei area. And then we went into the more specific areas of change and then the policies associated with those.
Chair.
Director?
Yeah, if I may, where we recorded you stopping was on the conversation about the designations for the artist formerly known as Pi'ilani Promenade. I know that there may be some interest in returning to the Central Maui Base Yard area. I just would encourage the commission to keep the momentum.
Yes.
And if so, I have just some comments from the department on that item if you'd like.
Okay, yes, thank you. And the department, just to note in our packet, we got dated November 16, 2024, a brief summary of where we got to on the 12th. So everybody has that reference also, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So go ahead, Director.
Mahalo. So for Pi'ilani Promenade, which is how I'll refer to it from here on forward, I think through the discussion, we're going to recommend, so our letter from, I can't remember the date on our proposed amendments. I'm looking to staff but it was within your packet. So you've been referring to this letter throughout. We recommended, the department recommendation was a mix of small town center and residential. So the residential portion being more Mauka. I think it's important to reiterate here that small town center is a mixed use designation. And especially if paired with the existing area of change policy 3.5.8 on page 93, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you. Paired with that, you would achieve the mix of residential and commercial that is being discussed and was proposed by Mr. Chipchase and has been discussed with the community as a kind of a good blend of those things. So I just want to make that comment that we would recommend just being consistent and making it all small town center. If you want to amend the area of change policy to, ask that the residential be away from the highway, as was discussed by a testifier, you may do something like that. But I just wanted to be clear about our recommendation there. That is all.
Yep, thank you. Commissioners, you all got that? Do you have any clarifying questions for the director? Okay. All right. Well, if not.
Hey, Chair.
Oh, yep. Commissioner Dicos?
So, question for the director. You mentioned in conversation with the community, they were okay with the designation. Did I hear that correctly? What did you mean by conversations with the community?
So I was referencing conversations that happened in the last meeting here, but I also defer to staff if there were additional conversations that happened during the CPAC phase to get to this policy of 80-20 that was in the existing plan, or perhaps Commissioner Ward could offer some insight on that.
The Pi'ilani Promenade was an area that changed designation kind of alternating between being residential and small town center and back to residential. And this policy of the 80-20 commercial and small town center, this was a policy that was added by CPAC and provided by the Kihei Community Association. So this was a policy that they supported for the small town center designation to get at the residential to commercial balance that they're looking for. The one thing that maintained the same is the open space was recommended in every iteration that was voted through.
And to my recollection, exactly that, but we didn't take the policy out at that last round when it went back to residential, which is why the policy was in, but the residential designation was in the map.
One more.
Sorry, why you did not take the policy out is what you said.
We did not, quite honestly, I think we forgot.
Okay.
Brutally honest, I think we just forgot and didn't take it out.
No, appreciate the transparency. That's good.
Chair, just one more point of clarification, if I may. On the, I said all small town center, that is not exactly what I meant. I meant small town center, mix of small town center and open space as proposed. Yeah, so not just small town center.
So yes, we had pretty extensive deliberation on this at our last meeting. If you all recall. So
I'd be happy to make a motion.
sure, go ahead, Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Chair. So I would move to accept the planning department's changes to make the promenade small town center.
Mommy, you're a good driver, Elijah says.
Whoa, somebody has their sound on
Trash can outside.
We
Even
can
after I
all
told him to
hear
Upper.
your conversation. Okay. Sorry, clarifying your motion, the department recommendation in their memo from September 23rd.
No, was what the director actually just presented, because the November 16th memo. Wait, bear with me. The November 16th,
So you're looking at this one?
that's the 20th, September 23rd.
Anyway,
So September 23rd, that one was split between residential and small town center. I
Okay.
don't believe we received the updated.
okay, so you're saying all small town center for all four of those parcels?
Correct.
Okay,
Chair, if I may, just with the exception of the areas designated as open space in our recommendation, just to make that very, very clear.
yeah, no, appreciate it. So Commissioner Lindsay, I think you saw a second? Yeah, and you got the clarification, yeah. Okay. So would you like to speak to your motion?
Sure. I think that one, going back to the information we received from Corp Council, being consistent of one land use designation was important. And based on Corp Council's recommendation stating that they felt small town center was the appropriate designation based on the current terms of the settlement, would be my second reason. But actually, my primary reason is that I believe that it actually follows suit to what the goal of the South Maui plan is, which is creating walkable communities where they can be next to jobs, they're next to schools, they're next to parks, and it's convenient, and they're not going to have to get into cars and drive other places. And I think looking at the whole holistic picture of that one specific parcel, but then the surrounding parcels, it does kind of blend in. The last point that I would make is if you actually look at the whole South Maui map and you look at where the ranches are proposing putting their kind of neighborhood community or neighborhood centers, and then you look at where kind of on South Kihei Road is kind of the small time center concept, it actually does basically an up and down across the highway if you look at the whole entire stretch, and there really aren't bubbles where they're overlapping. So from that in itself, just looking at it kind of goes up and down and up and down. So for that in itself, to me, that's accomplishing what we want the plan to actually do. So that was a little long-winded, sorry.
No, thank you. That was thorough. Commissioner Lindsay, as the second, would you like to speak to your motion?
I have nothing to add to that except that Commissioner Ward was there through this whole process. So I trust his judgment being from the area, in addition, being the commissioner from South Maui. That's all, but I agree with everything Commissioner Ward said. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion from the other commissioners? Commissioner Kealoha.
I have a clarifying question. Does this motion, what I'm looking at is the September 23rd recommendations, that and the 3 pictures on page 2. There is a department recommendation to reduce the riparian zones, and I want to make sure that this motion does not include that. Like, we'll have a discussion about that separately.
Okay, so you're thinking about just the small town center kind of broadly for this area, and then you would want to go more specific and kind of separately discuss the green open space designation areas.
Yeah, I'm wondering, yeah. 'cause
Okay. No, sure, the director has something to say.
So just to assist with why we made this recommendation, if I'm not mistaken, staff correct me if I'm wrong. But the reason we shrunk the open space designations here is to match the LUC DNO. So that is consistent with what the LUC found is the appropriate areas for open space. And so that's why you see that decrease there. And staff is nodding, which implies to me that I'm remembering this correctly.
I don't totally understand what that means. Are you saying that you have to reduce those open spaces to be consistent with the land use commission?
Director?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if you did adopt this potential, this arrangement, that would be consistent with them. You know, I can't really speak to the conversation that led to that narrowing, or to be clear, not narrowing, that the conversation that was had that led to those boundaries. You of course can choose to expand them if you'd like to. But if the commission is concerned with being consistent with the LUC's DNO, then this would be the way to go about doing that. Also no, I'll stop there.
Ms. Compwich?
The area around what looks like a leg with a cast on it, was expanded because that is supposed to be a dark sky area. And so the purpose behind that being bigger is so the sky would be darker. And the gulches, that is an area, those are areas known to flood. So there was a desire to protect the more Makai portions of Kihei with this expansion of the open space area from what the LUC recommended. And then they also, CPAC also recommended the 150-foot buffer be designated as green open space.
Is that the green as reflected on this department recommendation? Oh, you're talking about the green as it is in the community plan?
The South Maui CPAC recommendation.
Okay.
And then the department recommendation does match the LUC, the current plans, like their current approvals, I should say.
Okay, got it.
Can I ask-
Commissioner Ward, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify that if the policy that we have for whatever we decide for a buffer would then be applied if the LUC was then modified, correct?
100-foot buffer or the policy for the 150-foot setback? Or the 50-foot setback, I think is what you have right now.
Either.
It should be consulted when they get their subdivision.
That's what I would assume. I just wanted to clarify that it could potentially end up being bigger than what the other LUC is.
Mhm. Okay. So I think we need to address Commissioner Kealoha's question then. Director.
You could take the first thing first and then come back to the second thing. So if you wanted to have the motion be regarding the 4 parcels and then come back to the idea of the open space within, you could certainly do that and just work from a place of clarity to make that decision. But the motion as it is now includes that open space piece. Of course, you could go through the motion. Yeah, I maybe remove the open space piece and just focus on the small town center, get clarity on that, and then address the open space.
Okay.
I'm fine with making that as an amendment because until we actually decide what we want for the other policies, it's kind of up in the air anyways.
Yeah.
I don't think it necessarily has to be part of this motion.
Okay. So your motion is just for the small town center.
Just land use designation of small town center.
Okay. And Commissioner Lindsay has a second. You're okay with that? Okay. So is there any further discussion on just this? Okay, Commissioner Dicos.
Yeah, and I know last time we discussed it, I was upsetting a lot of people. So I just trying to understand all the pieces here. I'm a little bit confused. So if I maybe we're beyond questions, but can we just clarify one, this will require a land use commission redesignation because residential, according to what Mr. Hopper said and what the planning department said, under the existing designation, residential will not be allowed. So there will have to be a land use commission. Can someone clarify that?
Mr. Hopper, are you online?
I mean, I believe Mr. Hopper said it at least 3 times at the last meeting, but I'm a little confused why I'm the only one hearing it and nobody else is hearing that. Maybe the planning.
Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I had trouble unmuting. Yeah, well, there seems to be in writing sort of a disagreement from the parties to an extent on this. I saw Mr. Chipchase had a statement that he believes that there could be residential provided it is consistent with the site plan. I know Mr. Perez, representing another one of the parties to the agreement, believes there sounded like in his testimony there can be no residential uses. My understanding was in the discussion of the project before the Land Use Commission, when there were proposed 250 workforce units there, the issue was that the Land Use Commission didn't review potential traffic impacts with respect to residential uses. And though the light industrial zoning allowed for residential uses in the form of apartments, that the commission determined that in that particular case, residential uses were not consistent with the decision and order. And therefore, they had to build basically in accordance with the site plan attached to that settlement agreement, something that was consistent with the original proposal, which my understanding and remembering that proceeding was that you couldn't do residential uses because that was not considered by the commission. But again, we could more fully review that background. And there's nothing in the actual settlement agreement that specifies a breakdown of uses. That potentially would have been helpful, but I don't think the parties had necessarily an agreement on that, such as the percentage of light industrial to commercial to any residential. I don't think it gets that specific, but I would have a concern about residential being here without going to the Land Use Commission. And so if someone wanted to do that, if it was designated residential in the plan, but the land use commission decision order didn't allow that. They would need to go to the land use commission before getting, I think, potentially further development approvals in the form of a motion to amend the decision in order to allow for to more specifically allow for residential uses. But that's there does appear to be some disagreement from potentially the landowner on whether they could do some residential under this settlement agreement. Perhaps the parties need to sit down and discuss this in more detail. But my recollection of those proceedings and being there for a pretty long time was that residential was something that would be allowed under the zoning, but that the land use commission believed wasn't something that was allowed by the representations of the parties. There's also the State Office of Planning who was involved, and they could potentially be another party to consult on their opinion on whether any residential uses are currently allowed under the decision in order. They might have something to say on that too, because they're an automatic party to all land use commission proceedings as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hopper. Before we go back to you, Commissioner Dicos, Director has something else to add.
Mahalo, Chair. I just want to add that, everything that Mr. Hopper said is correct. Everything that Mr. Chipchase said is correct. Everything that Mr. Perez said is correct. But the issue that is in front of you right now is whether or not the South Maui Community Plan should say small town center, residential, or some other designation. It does not really matter what the Land Use Commission said on this particular case. And so my comment regarding open space stands as in the same vein, right? If you wanted to expand your open space designation there, you could. If you wanted to put all small town center, you could. And I just highly recommend that the commission consider the issue at hand and not allow the future activities of the Land Commission impact your decision-making on this subject matter. Your job is to consider what the community said they wanted in this space and apply that. And if, you can let the parties go at it after this plan is adopted. That is just the advice that I would like to offer to the commission as you do your deliberations.
Thank you. Commissioner Dicos.
So, and that's the fourth time Mr. Hopper's mentioned that. So I think a lot of the push away from residential to small town center was the argument that you would have to go back to the Land Use Commission if you if you designated it residential. But I'm pretty sure Mr. Hopper just said it once again. The special conditions under this parcel is going to make hard for any residential, which would require. So I just wanted, this is not my opinion. That was our Corp council. Now to address what the director just said, again, I'm not pushing residential. That came with the plan. And as we all want to do is protect as much as we can what the community requested. All the testimony suggesting they wanted small town center other than from the development. So I'm a little confused about this was a mistake that happened and they really wanted it to be small town center and they accidentally left it. So again, I'm not trying to push my agenda here. I'm just trying to, make 1 + 1 = 2 here. So is that what happened? Can you clarify this mistake and why there isn't any testimony saying, yeah, we mistakenly called it residential. We wanted it to be small town center.
Chair, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Dicos. So again, to the best of my recollection, the original designation that CPAC did apply was small town center. We then, with that, we wanted to have a policy that supported putting residential in, which is why the 35.8, I believe it is, was put into the plan. At the very end of CPAC, it was then switched over to residential, and we did not remove the policy that stated we wanted the 80-20 split. That's what I was referring to. That was the error, that we just didn't pull that out, but it was put in when we originally made the initial land use designation. And that was again to protect the residential side.
Sorry, did you forget to remove the 80/20?
We forgot to remove, well, I'm saying we forgot, I'll say, I did not remember to make a suggestion to remove 35.8 because that was tied to the small town center. It was no longer applicable if it was residential.
Okay. Okay. I'm trying to understand the logic here. I know it was designated residential with an interest in some commercial that services that community is what I heard from testifiers, and that is not small town center. That's residential, or the other one I keep forgetting, the second one. So I mean, I'm open to helping me understand, but it still does up to me. So
Yeah, no, thank you for seeking understanding. Director has something to add.
Thank you, Chair. And Commissioner Deacos, I think it's important to just acknowledge one really important thing. In order to achieve the 80-20 split that we're discussing, residential will not be able to accomplish that. And if you are looking to accomplish that through designation, some mix of residential and neighborhood center, which we highly recommend against, you would have to designate on the map where that neighborhood center went. And so I would not recommend that. I would recommend doing small town center along with that policy to achieve that 80-20 split that's been discussed. So I just wanted to clarify that in order to achieve that 80-20 split, you cannot do that with all residential on that designation. Residential, any commercial and residential is supposed to be very, very small, much smaller than 20%. Mahalo, Chair.
Yes, thank you. And I do want to point out, looking back at my notes from past testifiers we've had, we did have testimony from Vernon Kalanikau at a past meeting, who I believe he said he lives in North Kihei, and he said he would be in support of having commercial at Pilani Promenade, so he doesn't have to go further down into Central Kihei. He can just stay up there in North Kihei, and there would be everything that he needs right there. And if he's right there, then there's, not the additional traffic, and he gets to stay within his neighborhood. And the things like Commissioner Ward brought up is what's been asked for holistically within the plan, to have this mix of uses close by, where there's a school, where there's other housing, where there's other commercial, the uses play off of each other. Jobs, yes, close to where residences are.
right, which residential does allow, as does I keep forgetting the other one. But what I hear from the director is, even though it's not in the definition, there is a percentage allowance that gets tagged on to those two descriptions, and that would prevent a 80-20. Is there an actual percentage that's tied to those two? Because it obviously states in there, I don't have it in front of me, but it states serving the immediate community, the immediate neighborhood, right? Where small town center is serving the neighboring, the neighboring. So that's going to pull commercial away from neighboring neighborhoods, which was a concern. So maybe it's just the percentage I need clarification on. It's not in the definition, but clearly it should be, or there's an implication of a percentage. Maybe the director could clarify.
Yeah, we'll give this to the department.
So this is Jackie from the Planning Department. So the community plan designations are more conceptual. They're going to describe the appropriate uses in these different designations. They're not going to spell out the exact proportion, but you can read the descriptions of the designations to get an idea of what it would be like. Residential, which would have minimal, very minimal, as the director mentioned, commercial use, versus neighborhood center, which would be very small and would allow single-family dwellings, versus small town center, which would be allow multifamily and a little bit more commercial, but it's still a mix as described. You would get to the exact proportions and uses when you look at the zoning in Title 19. The community plan designations describe the appropriate uses and what the community is going to look like as a whole, not the specifics. And that's why the policy was prepared for this 3.5.8 to clarify the 80-20 split, to add that in to make sure that the small town center designation, which the designation itself does not have, but this policy does. Thank you.
If I may add on, since I understand, Commissioner, you do not have the designation right in front of you. I'll
I
go
have it
down
in
to-
front of me now. I have it.
Oh,
in
you do?
here.
Okay, great. So I would direct your attention to the third or fourth sentence where it says these uses should create safe, walkable commercial nodes for the surrounding neighborhood. And as one of the planners that was responsible for drafting this language, what I will say is what we were envisioning is your corner store. So like a place where you can go, like a bodega, where you can go pick up milk and a few items that you need in an emergency. It is not meant for the type of commercial that would be described in the policy that the CPAC has. So again, I think I'm on record as designating what the right designation to achieve that split is.
Okay. So I'm reading it. Residential, small scale commercial use that serve the immediate neighborhood. Apparently there's a percentage allocated to that. That's less than 20%. Neighborhood center, commercial uses that service neighborhoods up to 1/4 mile away. Apparently there's a percentage where it says mixed commercial residential. There's a percentage that's less than 20% is what I'm hearing. And then you get to small town center, that commercial centers that service nearby neighborhoods. So now you're no longer just serving that neighborhood. You're pulling traffic from the neighboring neighborhood. So that's what I'm reading. The first two seem to align with what we're all talking about, but I think we beat this to death. So I will, I'll defer.
Yeah, from what I gather from the department, these are describing like the character of the area. They're not as rigid and as prescriptive as zoning is. Like these are meant to say what the area should kind of feel like and be like once they are built out. And it sounds like, and even looking at the imagery with the development pattern examples and the bullet points that are described, if you look at the residential section, it's basically all housing, as the director was describing. And the last bullet point there says that small-scale commercial uses that serve the immediate neighborhood may be permitted on a limited basis, provided they're pedestrian-oriented and will generate minimal vehicular traffic.
Yeah, and that's fine. We must have heard different stuff from the testifiers. So I think I appreciate all the time that's spent trying to help bring me there, but I cannot. I'm struggling. So, but I appreciate the time.
No,
Probably spent
yes,
too much time on
appreciate
it.
where you're coming from also. Any thoughts from other commissioners on this subject? Okay, if no further discussion, I think we can call for a vote on this item for the small town center designation, understanding that we will discuss the corresponding policies and open space separately. Ready?
Yep. Commissioner Hipolito.
Aye.
Commissioner Dicos.
No.
Commissioner Kealoha.
Hi.
Commissioner Lindsay.
Aye.
Commissioner Ward.
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson,
Aye.
Chair Thayer. Oh, wait, no need. 5.
That's 5 votes. Okay, the motion carries. All right, so while we are on this subject, we should take up the corresponding policies.
Can you reference the page numbers as you do this? I'm getting lost in this.
Yes. So if you're on the hard copy, it's page 93. There are, in orange, it says area specific policies for, quote unquote, Pi'ilani Promenade properties. They start with 3.5.7.
And the policies? Oh, this is the policy, sorry.
These are the policies, yeah. 3.5.7 through 3.5.16. Director?
And just for clarification, Mahalo Chair, there, in our recommendation of September 23rd, we recommended that this policy 3.5.8 be stricken, but we are unrecommending that based on the change to small town center. I just wanted to make sure that was clear for all of the commissioners.
Thank you. So yes, the department's memo from, yes, September 23rd has some suggested changes from the department. Starting with 3.5.7. Yes, Planner Comquich.
The intent of most of our changes is just to clean up the language and make it clearer and easier to understand. It is not to change the intent of the policies overall.
Everybody heard that? Okay. Okay, so commissioners, any action on 3.5.7? I have a question on this, maybe for Commissioner Ward or for the department by way of background. I'm curious about the intent of this, considering how they would relate to a culture impact assessment or archaeological inventory survey. Three point 5.7.
I can't tell you the page, but the LUC order stipulation and orders also has this as one of the stipulations, something similar about involving lineal descendants from the area. I think it's to more directly work with the interveners who were lineal descendants of the area.
But I would actually, if I may, Chair, that it's also one of the themes that we kind of like constantly went back to, is we always wanted to go back to the respective lineal heritage to make sure that whatever's happening in whatever part of the island or within South Maui, that the appropriate individuals were being engaged, not necessarily just anybody that says, I want to make a statement about this area. We wanted to make sure it was going back to the MOCA, so that it's getting right information. You can go broader, but so it was kind of a theme that we tried to put in very consistently.
So like the plan for preservation of culturally important areas and continued access would be like separate from, say, monitoring plan or preservation plan.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea was we wanted to make sure that access to preservation areas was always available.
Okay.
And so versus that if somebody was going to build something and then they built a big wall around it, well, great, you preserved it. But if those lineal heritages can't get there, then it doesn't benefit, make the point that we were trying to make.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Director?
Yeah, so the changes, just to be clear that as Planner Komkowicz mentioned, the changes to this particular policy were in just cleaning up the language to make it easier for us to implement. And when that would happen is when the project came in for our review, we would just make sure that the project proposal includes this. And it may be through the cultural impact assessment, it may be through myriad ways, but this, we would have to check this and say, yeah, this
Okay.
checks the box.
So it could be done if they do say a cultural impact assessment, this would satisfy that.
And if I may, Chair, that there is an action, and I think it's in the last section, that was proposed that a database is created where all of the stuff is tracked of who reached out to who, what was reviewed, what was the question, what was the decision, so that in 20 years when we're not sitting around the table and some folks might not be here, that you can always go back and reference, say, what was the precedence or what was actually requested, what was reviewed, what was the decision. So
No, thank you. Appreciate the background.
So just to give you context, that's action 5.04, develop and implement processes and procedures for cultural advisor engagement and a database to document / track outcomes. Correct?
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions on this, or I guess maybe we can have a motion? If you would like to accept the department's changes.
Chair, I'd be happy to make a
Commissioner
motion.
Ward?
So a quick question before I make a motion. I would be happy to make a motion to accept all of the changes. Unless any of the commissioners want to specifically call one out that they don't agree with, that way speed it up a little bit faster. We can obviously discuss all of them, but I would only do that if everyone's okay with that.
So all the way through 3.5.16,
Correct.
unless, is there any modification you would want to make to 3.5.8? So it'd be keeping that one in instead of striking it.
Correct.
As the department said.
Correct.
Okay.
With that modification.
Okay.
But again, open to all discussion on any of them, just for ease of use.
Okay. Well, I guess we can see if there would be a second for that motion to accept the department's changes for 3.5.7 through 3.5.16, except for keeping 3.5.8 as it is. Unless, okay, second from Vice Chair. Okay, this is open for discussion. So if there's any ones of these commissioners that you actually do want to make changes to, I think the move on is open to that. Oh, we did lose Decos. Oh, there, oh.
There he is.
Okay. I guess Mike, I have a question on 3.1.5 and 6, and I understand the intent to combine these. My question is, would this still, as the revised policy suggested by the department, would this still call for trees along Piilani Highway? Because that's technically outside the development, but would this still call for that to happen as it's written?
It would not. I mean, that's right.
Okay.
That's a separate policy.
That is the 3.5.15.
That was the one.
Is that.
If not, then I would say either keep 3.5.15 or add in to the department's language throughout the development and along the
Piilani Highway border. Yeah. Well, if somebody would want to propose that as a friendly amendment,
I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
I don't know that I can make motions necessarily, but
I would like to propose that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you, Commissioner Lindsay.
I will accept that.
3.5.6.
Is there a second? Okay, and you got support from Vice Chair for that.
And I can speak, if I may, Chair.
Yep.
To that the previous owner, she did express, based on what I've been told, so
Mhm.
may not be 100% verbatim exactly correct, but the desire was that she wanted a tree-lined street along the Piilani so that it just was a prettier look.
Mhm. Director?
Yeah, Chair, to address this concern, I think including along Piilani Highway. So where it says canopy trees will be included in the landscaping throughout the development to provide shade, including along Piilani Highway, on roadways, and in parking lots.
Okay.
If I may, Chair.
Yep.
One other policy that we did put in as well, it's not directly tied to this, is asking for irrigation to be put in for empty parcels to do just that along open space areas, so that as you're driving down the highway, you get to look at pretty trees, where appropriate, of course, versus looking at empty lots. And so that I don't remember what policy number that was.
Okay, well, we can tackle this one first.
Yeah, but I guess I was just adding.
Oh, yeah,
that
no,
was-
for
that was the
context.
context.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Commissioner Lindsay.
I'd be hesitant to do that because of the water use and taking from the EO aquifer. So we should talk to Wailuku about that one.
Okay, we can address that policy separate, but right now, just this friendly amendment to add along Piilani Highway to this department's proposed language that's combining 3.5.15 and 1.6.
Could I ask the department for just a clarifying question?
Sure.
So we're saying that these are promenade specific, but they're really not just promenade specific. I mean, the policy should also be the tree line streets in all developments. So applicable in this one scenario, I mean, that policy would still be a policy for a different parcel, correct?
No. If I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so because this policy is limited to this area of change, it would only apply to this area of change. If you wanted a policy that did what you're describing, you would need to have a policy that is in, say, the quality of life section.
There is a similar policy about native trees or trees and landscaping along roadways. This one, this was added by CPAC, I think at the last meeting, to have canopy trees specifically in Piilani Promenade.
So from my perspective, as long as that policy, it's fine being specific for this one. I just want to make sure we have a policy that's for the balance of parcels, because I would not want them to not have it.
Yes. Staff, can you make a note of that for when we go back to section 2, please? Okay, so is there any other discussion on this friendly amendment to 3.5.15 and 1.6? Commissioner Decos, is that your hand being raised?
Yeah, sorry. Can you, I keep hearing different numbers. So 3.5.5, is that the one?
1.5, 15 and 16.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Would you like me to read how they're reading combined right now?
I have it in front of me now. Sorry, I was scrambling a bit, but I have it. Yes, if you could read it, how it's read with the changes, that'd be great.
So now they would be combined into one policy that would read canopy trees will be included in the landscaping throughout the development to provide shade, including on Piilani Highway and on roadways and in parking lots throughout the development.
Okay.
Repeated throughout the development twice.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And did we go through all the 3.55? No.
No, so, Commissioner Ward put forth a motion to accept the department's changes for, policies 3.5.7 through 3.5.16, except for keeping 3.5.8 instead of striking it. And he was open to other changes within those. So Commissioner Lindsay has this friendly amendment for this modification that we're talking about to the combination of 15 and 16.
Okay, yeah, no issues with the 15, 16.
Okay, so I think we can call, oh, Commissioner Lindsay?
Can you add native plants to that? Because oftentimes the big shade trees are not native, and oftentimes the native trees are not super shady. So I know the intention is to have lots of shade there, but I feel like we should prioritize native trees over shade trees. I'm not sure, or at least add it as an option. Because it is in the old copy, monkey pod or native canopy tree line.
Hmm. So you would, instead of canopy trees, it would say monkey pod or native, or you would want to just say,
I just want to include native. I think the canopy tree includes the monkey pod, but the canopy, the native canopy in that area might not be like very generous shade that I could picture in my head. I see the intention, but I'm again worried about watering these huge trees in the far reaches of Kihei.
Oh, and native canopy trees?
Yeah, and native, or just make sure, because I think native was removed.
I think we could canopy trees with preference for native
Yeah, sure.
or priority. Yeah.
And Chair, if I may, there is another policy that we discuss
Mhm.
what types of trees and just that native is, native plantings should be a priority for everyone,
Yeah.
So
I think it's just hard to find two native canopy trees, so.
I don't disagree.
Yes, it's like Milo, Wani.
So that's why I would just say native trees, because there's like.
Oh, versus canopy, you're
Yes.
saying?
I would say it was, sorry, may I?
Go ahead.
It was very important that it was canopy trees for the shade. So while we do have policies that support native, this one is specifically desiring a canopy.
But I would agree.
Okay, so can we say canopy trees
Prioritize.
prioritizing native? Okay. Love it. Plant native plants. They will save the world. Okay, any further discussion on this amendment, or we can vote on this amendment? Commissioner Dicos.
Okay, can you clarify which ones are we addressing?
So right at this specific moment, we are talking about a friendly amendment to the main motion to make some modifications to the department's language for 15 and 16, 3.5.15 and 16.
Okay, all right, I'm tracking.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I think we can call for the vote on this amendment.
All right, Mahalo Chair. Commissioner Hipolito.
Aye.
Commissioner Dicos.
Aye.
Commissioner Kealoha.
Aye.
Commissioner Lindsay.
Aye.
Commissioner Ward.
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson. That's 6 votes in favor.
Okay, thank you. So any other modifications to policies from 3.5.7, I guess now through 3.5.14? Because we just did 3.5, 15 and 16. So within this grouping, does anybody else have any other changes? Or, oh, Commissioner Dicos?
Okay, so we're talking about 3.5.7.
Yep.
Are we talking about 3.5.8?
Yep. So we are saying the motion on the floor is to keep that in instead of striking it.
Okay, okay.
Recommendation.
Yeah, Planner Comcoach.
The current policy says, for 3.5.8 says the 3 parcels. You might want to make it the 4 parcels.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that up. So did everybody hear that online? Okay. Commissioner Dicos?
So a lot of discussion on this, and there was a lot of, don't worry, Commissioner Decos, this is all, one of the concerns about the small town center was there was a push for as much commercial as possible to sort of align with the initial intent of the mega mall. And I was repeatedly told, don't worry, this policy is going to protect that from happening. Could you maybe just expand on that so that everyone that's nervous now that there's a potential for full commercial there, how this is enforceable and will not allow, I guess, more than 20% commercial?
Director?
Mahalo, Chair. So for this item, by adding this policy or keeping this policy with the change that's proposed from 3 to 4 parcels, we will have to consider this when the project comes in for our review. So we will have to look at it and make sure there's an 80-20 split of residential and commercial. And that will ensure, this policy will ensure that when we review this project, that it will meet that requirement. I don't know if there's any other way I can say it, but I'm happy to keep trying if that's helpful, Commissioner Dicos.
I like the way you said it. It was music to my ears. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mahalo.
Okay, so is somebody putting forth a motion for a friendly amendment to change this from 3 to 4 parcels? Vice Chair? So moved.
So moved.
So moved by the Vice Chair.
I'll second.
Any second an amendment to your own motion? I guess you can. I see second from Commissioner Kiloha. Okay.
Annie's good.
Thank you, though. I appreciate the spirit to move this forward. Very good. All right. So any discussion on this? Otherwise, we will call for the vote.
Mahalo, Chair. Commissioner Hipolito.
Aye.
Commissioner Dicos.
Aye.
Commissioner Kealoha.
Aye.
Commissioner Lindsay.
Aye.
Commissioner Ward.
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
Chair, that's 6 votes in favor.
Motion carries. Beautiful. Okay. Any other changes to the policies in this section, or we can take up the vote on the main motion? I see nobody raising their hand. So, Director, vote on the main
all voted-
motion.
Mahalo, Chair. Commissioner Hipolito.
Aye.
Commissioner Dicos.
Sorry, the main motion is all of the ones we just discussed.
All the ones we just discussed with the changes that we've just passed
Okay, aye.
on the amendments. Thank you.
Commissioner Kealoha.
Aye.
Commissioner Lindsay.
Aye.
Commissioner Ward.
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson. That's 6 votes in favor, Chair.
Fantastic. Motion carries. Okay, so that, look at us go. Yes. Okay, so that is Pilani Promenade Properties. Director?
The open space.
Yes. Yes, so there is the question of open space, which I think we touched upon might be a broader question on
Broader policy.
all the open space policies. Planner Comquich?
You have
This
a-
one actually has more expanded open space than other areas.
Okay,
That a larger buffer was added around both the cultural preserves and the gulches for this area.
okay. So. Maybe Commissioner Kealoha, since you had brought up the open space. Would you like?
Well, I guess I'm in favor of keeping the riparian zones as is, just given the massive amount of sedimentation and flooding in South Maui and that area, having impacts to infrastructure, to people's lives. I mean, it's a safety issue, to water quality. I just think that when you have bigger buffers, that all of that vegetation can help to absorb the rainfall, the runoff, it mitigates flooding and erosion. And so I just see a lot of value specifically for this area, given like the amount of flooding and sedimentation this area receives, that we make these buffers wide. And so that's why I brought it up.
Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Kealoha. Sorry. Yes.
And just for background, that's exactly what the thought process was. I guess the only reason I was saying that we look at the other policies is we might choose to have the same in the other policies. So it would be it would be the same, no duplication. Or it may guide us to making a decision with the other policy. And then I think it also with the buffers along the highway, it's kind of putting all the pieces together. So it's just my thought.
Do you have something to say? Not sure.
Director.
And this may be just an opportunity to confer with staff. I believe the policy that would be referenced is maybe the 100 feet from the top of a gulch question, right? That's kind of what you're looking about. And did the commission, I feel like the commission already addressed this policy or discussed this policy in the policy sections 2.
I think it was just one of the ones that was accepted as or wait, is that one we're going back? I don't.
So since we don't have section 2 on our agenda tonight, we can't really discuss it. Certainly when we return to this item, you can, it's, the motion that you've made is to turn all of this area small town center. If you want to go with the CPAC's recommendation on open space, I think it would be good to have a conversation now in absence of that greater policy conversation. It would be worth having the discussion now and decide whether or not you want to go with the department's recommended skinnier version or the larger version that's described in the existing recommendation.
Question. By way of background, the department's version you said was from the SLUC state plan,
Correct.
right? Do you have any idea what like the dimensions or measurements of this are?
I think Jackie may have the decision in order and she can maybe describe that.
Sheriff, if I may, I would actually say, I would actually support the wider, just for the fact of how much flooding is coming down in that area. So even whatever the LUC has, that's old at this point.
Yeah, no, I'm just asking for reference.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted to make sure though that
No,
I was
yeah.
for having the wider. So happy to make that motion to get things. I would just, when we do go back to policies and 2, I'd just like to make sure we're consistent. Well, we're not making one bigger than the other. If this one's bigger, fine. But if we're making the other ones bigger, let's make sure we make this one then as big. I just want to make sure that we're not missing an opportunity.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's good to think holistically here.
So happy to make a motion.
Well,
or we looked at it.
Yeah. Okay,
There's
so
two things pending.
Okay.
The Gulch area is about 3, the on the LUC. Acres for the total area. So that's, yeah, the part where it's going down. And then the one that looks like a boot is the conservation area for the
Dark sky.
dark sky. And that one's about 2.
Okay.
A little less.
Thank you.
And something I think worth saying out loud in case it's not clicked in everyone's mind yet, that policy that's referenced in section 2 would apply to this. So if you went with the skinnier version of it, that policy still applies. They're still going to have to follow that Gulch policy. That setback. So that may be a reason, just for consistency purposes, to keep it at that smaller number, if that's the will of the commission.
Sir, oh,
Go ahead, Commissioner Kealoha.
I guess Director, I don't understand. Can you say that in another way?
Mahalo for asking it that way. I appreciate it. So what I'm saying is that the policy, and can we get the policy number, team, if you can track it down? So the policy that's in section 2 that says, that restricts building up to 100 feet or whatever that number is of the gulch, the top of the gulch, and they're finding the policy for me so I can get the language exactly right. That policy will apply to this as well. So because this line is drawn on a gulch, the majority of, so the northern portion of the property, so there's a, you know what I'm saying? It looks like a stream, right? That area, whether you go with this, if you go with the skinny version, that policy is still going to apply. So if you go with the skinny version, you can imagine that plus whatever the setback is going to be that you established in that policy, if that makes sense. So I'm not advocating for one position or the other. It does not address the dark skies situation with the boot cast looking one, for lack of a better way of saying it. I do not believe that's a gulch. That's just it's probably related to it's a cultural site. So the policy would apply to the northernmost area, but not the southernmost area on the boot.
I think the policies about gulches are 2.4.5 A and B. One is for redevelopments, one is for new developments.
Mahalo, Chair.
Commissioner Kealoha.
So 2.4.5 A and B. What is the benefit of just allowing the 2.4.5 A and B to regulate this section over just going with the South Maui recommendations for that section? What is the difference?
Director.
So as Planner Comcoach mentioned, the buffer that's showing in the South Maui Community Plan Advisory Committee recommendation is larger, I believe. Yes, larger than what is proposed in this policy, what exists in this policy. So it's really, I'm not advocating for one or the other. It's really the choice of the commission. If you want to, Commissioner Ward mentioned there was some concern, and one of the reasons why he was hesitant to move is because he wants things to be consistent. And so if you're looking for consistency purposes, adopting the department's recommendation for open space, knowing that it's paired with that policy is one way to achieve that consistency. If you go with the other version, you still get this policy 2.4.5 A and B, but it's already contained within that larger buffer. So if the will of the commission is to have a larger buffer, then you would go with the CPAC recommended. If you're vision is for consistency, you would go with the planning department's recommendation for open space. I hope that helped.
One more question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Kealoha.
And so just to clarify, the CPAC recommended a larger buffer here because these, I don't know, streams or whatever are associated with heavy sedimentation and flow down to South Maui.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I would recommend that we keep the 150 buffer.
That's the dimensions of the CPAC version. Okay, Commissioner Kealoha, staff is looking to clarify that.
I just want to make a quick point of clarification. So when you're taking a look at September 23rd memo on page 1. On page 1, there's two recommendations. One is the South Maui CPAC recommendation and the department's recommendation. There are two different types of open space that are being discussed here. One is kind of a conservation area around the gulches and that dark skies area. But I also want to point out that there's an area along Pi'ilani Highway that has been designated by CPAC, and that goes with the, 150-foot wide designation. I believe you addressed this policy at one point and you changed it to a different number. We would just recommend that you leave that out of your recommendation. So just focus on those conservation areas and not on the stuff on Pi'ilani Highway, just for clarity purposes. Mahalo, Chair.
Yeah, I remember those conversations and it starts to get a little bit stickier. So I am open to just addressing these conservation areas and addressing those boundaries by the highways separately.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Would you like to propose a motion?
Well, I guess I just propose to keep the South Maui CPAC recommendation as is for the conservation areas.
Okay. Is there a second? I see a second from Dico. Sorry, he had his hand up first. Okay. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I think I.
Okay. And Commissioner Dico says a second.
Yeah, I just think as we're trying to balance some of the impacts that were unintended in the past, erring on the side of more is better. I understand everything the director was saying about consistencies, but I support Commissioner Kealoha.
Thank you. Discussion from the other commissioners on this motion. Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Chair. As I said, I fully support it. I wanted to make sure that if the policy for general was less, that we weren't taking away from this here. So that's where I was talking about consistency. I just want to make sure we weren't taking away.
Yeah.
Because I was not part of that discussion for that policy because I wasn't here yet.
Okay, got it. Okay, anyone else? Otherwise, Commissioner Lindsay.
I think there was conversation about it being individual basis, and because the storm flows there, I guess certain drainage ways are never run, even with the big storms that happened, because the water has been diverted for whatever reason. I'm just wondering if those are included or excluded. I agree with public safety, so keeping them safe, but there are I'm just wondering if those specific gulches, because there's so many and those ones that don't run, if those are, have ability to have smaller, less than 100 feet.
I think what you're talking about would be captured by those policies in 2.4.5 A and B. Yes. So this one is kind of taking this as a unique scenario. And based on what Commissioner Kealoha is saying, this particular gulch actually is subject to flooding and sedimentation.
Okay, there was a lot of back and forth, so I wasn't sure if we were going back to 2.4.5 A and B and changing that, or if we're just moving forward.
Oh, no,
thanks.
thank you. Thank you for the question. So we don't have section 2 on the agenda, so we've asked staff to flag 2.4.5 A and B for us to revisit.
Okay, no, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. Anybody else?
Chair,
Oh, Commissioner Ward?
again, I support, one thing I would pass out to, or say to the commissioners that we should think about is that's a lot of open space. How's it maintained? What is, who maintains it? Kind of that, because that could be potentially very dangerous area based on, especially if we're having housing on both sides. So again, I support the concept, but
Want to make sure it's well
I think we need
managed.
to make sure that it's managed, and if this is workforce housing, if the community then becomes responsible for needing to maintain that, are we putting a burden and onus on that? So I'm just thinking bigger picture and making sure that we're not doing the right thing. We're doing the right thing, but do we end up doing maybe the wrong thing?
Right. No, yep, devil's in the details. I guess, is there perhaps a policy? I don't know that we could make a policy to this end, or,
We could make more new policies when we review policies.
yeah,
So we could just note that we need
Right.
want to do something with a policy.
because otherwise it would be something specific, because this specific one would be a larger area than the others. So there could be grounds for a specific policy for this one, but go ahead, Director.
So, mahalo, Chair. So this is one of those, I'm a planner and I'm a long range planner, and I've been doing this for a long time. And so everything I'm about to say is going to feel wrong, but I think it's right. The long range plan cannot do everything, nor should it do everything. When this item comes to the planning department for our review, that is going to be part of what we're considering. There's also like a ton of other laws and regulations out there that help us with things. So for example, controlling vegetation in a gulch is something that's under the purview of the fire department, right? So they're going to put out things and say, you guys need to control your stuff. So I caution the commission on overthinking this, that really your job is to designate these areas, these uses on the land, and then policies where you want to go a little bit further. But I just caution you not to overthink it. Mahalo for that, Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Dikos.
Just to add a bit along those lines, I think there's a tendency to want to engineer, control everything, whether it's engineering our shorelines, engineering our reefs, engineering. Sometimes nature just wants us to back off and let nature do its thing. I understand there's some fire concerns. I'm not dismissing that, but to say that every open space needs, to be managed and anyway, I think I agree. I think we need, we don't want to manage everything. Sometimes nature just wants to be left alone and it'll do its thing. But we do have to be concerned about fire for sure.
Okay. Commissioner Lindsay.
I think in this case, with letting nature do its thing, it's going to do invasive species. So then it will likely choke out, if without maintenance, it'll likely choke out all of the natives and allow for runway for the deer. But I am an advocate for letting nature do its thing. Too bad the native population of plants weren't stronger, so that they could overtake that.
Yes, to that point, our native ecosystems need a boost to be able to do what they do best.
Sure.
Commissioner Ward.
I completely agree with Commissioner Lindsay. And specifically on the deer,
Mm-hmm.
we have a huge problem. I literally was at my property, looked out my back window, and there was about 60 deer on the blue course,
Mm-hmm.
just chomping on the grass.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think it's one of those things we have to try to figure out how to balance without over engineering, but that definitely would give a very large
Yes.
space for them to come down
Correct.
and have them actually coming down straight onto the highway.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so right now, I believe our motion on the floor is specifically with designating this area on the map. Understanding there may be other provisions to address these very valid issues that are being brought up. But if there's no further discussion on the mapping designation itself, I think we can call for the vote on this. Yes, unless anybody wants to raise anything else. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification is that just if anybody's feeling uncomfortable, we will have one more time to review this.
Yes.
So it's not as if it's a one and done. So if we go through our other policies and we recognize that we want to make a change, we still have an opportunity to do so in the final review.
Correct. Yes. Thank you. Okay, Director. Oh, Commissioner Kealoha?
I don't know if this is going to help, but just another benefit of these like large buffer zones or riparian zones are nutrient cycling and providing habitat for native species. I'm not saying that like natives are going to grow there, but it does provide a habitat for them because it's going to be wet. So anyways, if that helps anybody.
Thank
But
you.
I'm ready for the vote.
Okay, let us do that.
Mahalo, Chair. Commissioner Hipolito.
I support Commissioner Kealoha's thought processes. I vote yes.
Mahalo. Commissioner Dicos.
Aye.
Commissioner Kealoha.
Aye.
Commissioner Lindsay.
No.
Commissioner Ward.
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
Chair, that's 5 votes in favor.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, so anything else specific to Piilani Promenade? Or are we? No, okay. Then the other areas of change on our agenda are Mocha, North Kihei, and the Central Maui Base Yard. And within Mauka North Kihei, there is North Kihei Mauka. Two separate things that are related. And so there are area specific policies and associated map for North Kihei Mauka.
We did that. Didn't we do that one last?
Did we finish that one last time? I don't remember. Yeah, I don't think we.
Would you like a history of how CPAC discussed Kihei Mauka?
Yeah, I don't think we went through the policies last time.
No, you're right. We didn't do the policy.
Okay. Sure. Planner Comcoach. Or I guess temperature check. Does anybody need a 5-minute break? I see nodding. Okay, let's do a 5-minute break. And then we can come back to this. Well, I'll give you 7 minutes. We'll come back at 6:05 as on time as possible. Thank you. Okay, welcome back to our Maui Planning Commission meeting of Tuesday, November 26th, 2024. We left off on the verge of looking at North Kihei Mauka. The department might have a little bit of background for us on this.
I will just say what the how CPAC changed it through the process. It started out all being designated small town center from the planning department. And then the first change was to change it from small town center to agriculture and open space for the entire area. And then it was changed to the mix of designations with neighborhood center, residential park, and open space. Let's just make sure. And then the roundabouts had been designated and that was removed. And I think that is the last of the changes. This one was one that CPAC discussed a lot. The difference between designating the entire space for growth and keeping it as agriculture and open space.
Thank you. Commissioners, thoughts on this? Any proposed changes? Keep it as is, no action. Any changes to the policies? Which the department had some suggested changes for. 3.5.1 through 3.5.6. And I recall testimony from Kihei Community Association and to some extent from Mr. Frampton, the representative, saying that in consultation with each other, they kind of came up with the land use designations as a package together with the policies. Director.
Yeah, Chair, I think this is another place to point out that the department's recommendations on our letter from September 23rd begin on page 4. Mahalo, page 4, and predominantly they were to clarify language and ensure the policy's intent was met. In all the cases, the language in these policies was a lot. And what we did was just consolidate it for purposes of implementation. It's just is easier for us to understand if there's not so many extra things that don't get to the outcome that's trying to be achieved. And so I think universally, every recommendation we make is to make the policy's intent clearer with more concise language.
Thank you for that. Was somebody raising their hand online? Commissioner Lindsay.
For 3.5.1, I was thinking we could reprioritize the stakeholders and include lineal descendants. So
would you like to make that as a motion?
Yes, I move to change the order and reprioritize the order of 3.5.1 to include lineal descendants as number 1, followed by cultural practitioners, South Maui residents, to include lineal descendants, South Maui residents, community groups, cultural practitioners, affordable housing advocates, landowners, developers. Actually, can you add cultural practitioners to the end because they're not necessarily people of that place? But I'm
Staff is working on capturing that. They might have you go through that order one more time to verify that they captured it correctly.
I'll second.
Okay. Commissioner Lindsay, can you restate your order?
Okay, lineal descendants, 1, number 2, South Maui residents, 3, landowners, 4, cultural practitioners, 5, community groups, 6, affordable housing advocates, and 7, environmentalists. The last ones, it's kind of, I just want to make sure we prioritize lineal descendants first, and then the others after.
I think you got a second from Commissioner Ward. So this is open for discussion. You can speak to your motion first, then Commissioner Ward, and then everybody else.
As I talked about in the other parts of the plan, the South Maui Community Plan, prioritizing the people of the place is most important. And then the others come after that. That's all.
I have nothing to add, although I may make a suggestion of slight reorder, if I may, which would be community groups. I would say should be before South Maui residents, because you're gonna have kind of an association or like Kihei Community Association or Wailea Association. They should be engaged before it goes to just all South Maui residents.
Okay, that's fine. On that note, I think landowners and developers should also be before the residents. I don't like doing this. I don't like this part.
Sure.
Commissioner Dicos and then Director.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it was gonna be, if we're trying to rank these, it's not gonna go well. I would just suggest bullet point. I'm fine with lineal descendants being at the top of the list of bullet points, but maybe that takes the ranking out of it.
Thank you, Commissioner Dicos. Director?
Mahalo, and I'm glad Commissioner Dicos went first. I want to be very clear that we are not ordering these things. Just because there's a number next to them doesn't mean that one has a greater priority over the others. This committee or this group, the stakeholder committee will be made up of all of these groups. So I would recommend to the commission taking numbers out, putting whatever order you want, but just take the numbers out completely if that's a concern for the commission. There is absolutely no reason to number these.
Okay.
Okay, I would like to change my motion if that's okay with my second.
Sure.
To remove the numbers, but put lineal descendants at the beginning and then add a and before the last number, which is 6 now, but will be 7.
But there's no
But
numbers.
there's no numbers.
Yeah, but the 7th,
Yeah,
whatever.
yes. Okay, and
I'm
that's
fine.
good with the second?
Yes.
Okay. You guys got the motion? Okay, is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none. I think we can call for the vote.
Mahalo, Chair. Commissioner Hipolito.
Oh,
Aye.
sorry. Commissioner Dikos, did you have something to say before we vote?
I was just gonna, I know in the past, we kind of went with consensus. We didn't go through a vote count every time.
Yeah, that's true. I guess we can raise everybody's hand. If you're in favor, raise your hand.
No objection.
Okay.
Is there no objections?
There's no objections. Everybody raise their hand. Okay. So 3.5.2 through 3.5.6. And maybe for 3.5.2, could the department speak a little bit about your changes here?
These changes are to clarify the language. It's and then we did take out the reference to the Kihei Community Association roadway design guidelines because referencing a design guidelines that are outside of the county is not appropriate in a community plan that's adopted by the county.
Okay, so like the project may very well do that on its own, but it would be outside the purview of this plan. Yeah. Director.
Just to add, number 10, we did consolidate some things here. So we took out number 10 and 11. And again, this is another place where this is not a rank order of things. It's just a list of stuff. So just to be really clear, we took that out mostly to give more flexibility. There's not a lot of reason to list all of these designations here. And the transect is a term that is not utilized anywhere else in the plan, if I'm not mistaken. It's a term of art, and it does seem very strange to throw it in there. Yeah, and also this is another place where I think this is a policy trying to go much too far into the weeds, whereas like, a lot of, and also, when you do a policy like that, it kind of binds you to whatever that policy said, even though down the road, there may be something better that even the community would agree. So having some flexibility there, I think would be wise. So that's just adding to what Planner Karen brought up.
Commissioner Dikos.
So I know there's a reference to, as approved by some oversight by the Kihei community. Is there, sorry, I'm trying to find that slide. The Kihei Community Association design. All right, let me try again one more time. Is there oversight on the master plan by the Kihei community?
I believe they are often consulted by landowners who are doing work in the South Kihei area. As a matter of practice, that happens anyway. There's a lot more community engagement work that is being conducted by developers of all kinds in recognition of, the whole push from the community to be involved that's risen over the last few years. It's happening to some extent anyway, but I'll let the director speak more to this.
Yeah, it is not proper for us to include design guidelines from a nonprofit organization that isn't connected with the county. So if you want design guidelines, we would need to adopt those separately. So I would just say that throughout, every time we've removed it, it is because it is improper for us to utilize the design guidelines of a non-governmental organization to make decisions.
Okay, so the policy before that 3.51 would establish the local community oversight. Does that tie into the next one? Or are they separate?
They are separate.
They all go together though.
Yeah, they relate. Yes, but they are achieving separate intents. Director.
Yeah, just to add on to that too. So 3.5.1 establishes a diverse stakeholder committee to guide. It doesn't approve, it has no real bearing except for to be a resource for the developer, which is great. And we want that kind of thing. I think we're very much in support of that, because the more you have this going on, the less frustration there is down the road when the project comes to the various approvals that it needs to get. So having this kind of stakeholder committee is great. And my guess is they will have input into 3.5.2 and all of these pieces of the master plan.
Okay, and the South Maui Advisory Committee would only have input if the Planning Commission would kick something to them?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Chair. If I recall, there's also a policy that we put in that refers that developers need to engage the appropriate community association, I'll call it, or neighboring community association, so that those design plans can get built in. But because they do change, we wouldn't want it as a stagnant document. But there is a policy that says you need to reach out to the respective areas to make sure that you understand what their design rules are. I just don't remember what policy number that is.
We will revisit that at some point. Yes.
At least I remember we have one.
Yes. Okay, so are there any is there a motion on this? And one thing I'm wondering is for number 8 to add in Parks and Rec. Or parks. Or anywhere in here, Parks and Rec facilities.
You were talking about policy 3.5.2, but adding an 8? Or are you somewhere else?
Oh, sorry, I should be more specific. Yes, in 3.5.2, maybe integrating greenways and parks and open space, or else have a separate bullet point item for parks and Parks and Rec. Director.
You can go either way. But I would just acknowledge that number 7 says detailed land use. So even 8 is kind of extra, but you could just add integrating greenways, parks and open space.
Yeah.
And that would be, if that is the will, I wouldn't recommend adding another one for that purpose.
Okay. But if anybody wants to put forth a
We don't have a motion yet.
motion. Commissioner Ward.
I'll put forth a motion to approve 3.5.2 through 7.
6.
6. No, 6. As proposed by the Planning Department.
Do you want to add parks to 2?
And to add parks to 3.52. As just discussed.
As just discussed. Okay, thank you. Second by Commissioner Lindsay. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I personally, I just think that this is something that was developed between the association, the community association is in conjunction with the developer. And excuse me. So if they've come to the agreement, let's make people happy and let's not change stuff. But I do agree with the consolidation of some of the wording from the planning department.
Thank you. Commissioner Lindsay, would you like to speak to?
No comment, Chair.
Okay. Any discussion? Commissioner Dicos?
So we're just, we went all the way to 3.5.6. Is that what we just did?
No, so similar to the last set of policies for Pilani Promenade, Commissioner Ward has put forth a main motion to accept the changes for the whole entire grouping. And I think there's opening for, you know, just like we did the last time, modifying specific policies within this grouping if we like, through friendly amendments.
Got it. So I do know on 3.5.5, I think that 100, I might be confusing that. That's not the 100-foot buffer off the highway, is it?
No.
No, correct. Were you raising your hand? Okay.
No, I can, but I actually have a question
You have a question?
for planning department but I don't want to stop discussion, so.
Yeah. Do you have further questions, Commissioner Dicos?
I guess, sounds like the community, seem very interested in those buffers, those right of ways, which align with walkability and safety and buffering neighbor. So why do we cross out the 100-foot right of way?
That's not talking about a buffer. That's setting out like the right of way being like the roadway lot for the future roadway to be within.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
So any other modifications to any of these policies? Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Chair. And it's really a question to planning. I think I know the answer, but I just want to make sure and also make this kind of part of the discussion anyways. So as I was asking one of the testifiers earlier about stopping the highway at Lapoa, I understand why this policy would be specific because it's to the specific project. I'm assuming it would be most appropriate to create a separate policy when we do policies to potentially have that go further, just as a further escape route for the rest of South Maui.
I need a little more context. I apologize.
No problem. So this is saying that they want it done concurrently or prior to the development, but it's going to stop at East Lapoa. That only really benefits a fraction of South Maui. And I'm saying, so, but I understand that this policy's with this, so I don't want to combine them. So I'm assuming the appropriate step would be to put a policy in later when to say it should get extended further.
Yeah, Chair, to address that question. So this policy is like you just said, it is only specific for this area of change. So if you want a policy that would extend that bypass, which I assume is what you're referring to, further south, you would want a policy in that. I actually wonder, it may be something to address in actions rather than policies. Because policies are only reviewed at the time of the development. Thank you. I feel like it's sinking in. That's great. So it may be an action at that point. So once we get to action, we're going to discuss that. And there may already be an action. I'm just not sure.
There may be, I just don't remember.
Can we flag that for when we get to that? Of course, make sure.
Yep. Just because we should make sure we have escape
Yes.
routes for everything.
Holistic. Everything should fit together.
It's all a connection.
Okay, any other changes or discussion, deliberation on this set of policies? Commissioner Dicos.
So I'm back on 3.5.5. And I understand the 100-foot right of way is not the Pilani Highway, but it sounds like the community was expressing a significant separation. And now we do have language, a walking and biking path separated by landscaping. So that could be as little as 2 feet, right? You could have, just wondering if the intent was to have a significant separation, if there, I feel like we're missing the intent of the size of the buffer there by just crossing out that whole thing, or not.
Director.
Yeah, so I think with these policies, we're setting up a system by which that can be better defined. So in the first policy, we're saying there's community, you're going to consult with this community group. And what I caution the commission on is being too prescriptive, as I said earlier. So this particular part that we're striking out in 3.5.5, a minimum 100-foot right-of-way as shown in this design guidelines example 11B, which includes a space. I'm not even, we'd have to look at what those design guidelines say, and I don't recommend that, to talk about what that separation is in those design guidelines. In this, it only talks about having a 100-foot right of way. That doesn't address that separation. So I don't think the amendments we are making to the policy are damaging the intent. What I will say is that we are leaving, by changing it, we are leaving it open for the community and the developer to discuss what that appropriate space looks like. And even so, when this project comes to the various bodies for approval, there will be that discussion. And it does say an adjacent walking and biking path separated from the roadway by landscaping. So in order to get landscaping in there, you're going to need a fairly significant space. So I think the intent of the policy is still met by this, but yeah, those are my thoughts.
Okay, yeah, I think I once again misread the 100-foot, but they do reference Pilani Highway. And I guess my question, the 100-foot buffer on the Pilani Highway was way back when. Did we resolve that, or is that something we're going back to later?
I believe we did resolve that, but it's, again, we're gonna go revisit all of section 2 once we work through the whole plan. But
Okay.
we did, I believe we did arrive at reducing the size of that buffer.
Okay, if somebody knows, because I didn't think we ever resolved that, but I think the reason they try to make it so prescriptive is because the bare minimum doesn't cut it. Like your interpretation of landscaping is significant, but somebody who's trying to, minimize the budget costs could put we see those 2-foot strips of sod, right? That could be considered landscaping. So anyway, just trying to understand the intent of the Kihei community.
Planning Commission reduced that to 50 feet.
Director?
Yeah, but also Chair, just in mind, keep in mind that 3.5.5 only talks about a 2-lane collector road. This is not Piilani Highway that connects directly from East Lipoa Street to the Veterans Highway. So this is not the Piilani Highway buffer that we're talking about. This is something different. So just for that clarity, Commissioner.
Good point. Yeah. Thank you.
He's going to be walking. Veterans Highway.
Okay, any other changes or modifications to these policies? Or we can call for concurrence from everybody. Okay. Yeah, okay. Commissioner Decoste?
Yeah. So I'm on 3.5.6. So what I'm reading is the intent was to emphasize affordable housing for, to me, 30% of total income, that's extremely, never mind. Sorry. I'm good. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you. Thank you for thinking through this. Looks like there's no further discussion on this. We can call for the vote. So this would be approving 3.5.2 through 3.5.6 with the one change to 3.5.2 to add parks. And I believe that was the only modification to the department's proposed changes. Okay, Director.
Mahalo, Chair. Commissioner Hipolito.
Aye.
Commissioner Dicos.
Aye.
Commissioner Kealoha.
Aye.
Commissioner Lindsay.
Aye.
Commissioner Ward.
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
Chair, that's 6 votes in favor.
Okay, thank you. Good job, everybody. Also on our agenda, there was Central Maui Base Yard Area of Change. Which I don't think we had any comments on that, but then we did have the written and oral testimony about the added industrial area that would require an amendment also to urban growth boundary. In the Maui Island Plan. Commissioner Ward.
Sarah, I'm happy to make a motion.
Okay.
I move to change TMK 238008005 from agriculture to industrial and to file a amendment to the Maui Island Plan to change the growth boundaries for that parcel.
Thank you. Is there a second? I see a second from Commissioner Lindsay. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I don't think anything further needs to be said. We've received multiple testimonies and both written and oral, so I think for that, it's pretty clear.
Okay. Commissioner Lindsay as the second.
Industrial uses are so needed in our community, and near that area too, it just makes sense connecting the entire thing. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners? Commissioner Dicos, followed by Commissioner Kealoha.
Yeah, I apologize. Can you remind me the parcel size? And is this the special use permit area that they're doing recycling? Maybe just, if you mind reminding me what this parcel is again?
This is a parcel in Pulehunui, so it's on like the Haleakala side of the drag strip. It's kind of like sandwiched between the drag strip and I think the cement facility. Director?
Yeah, just for the commissioner's benefit, in your packet or in among the comments received, there's a letter from Pacific Rim Land that has a map so you can see what parcel we're talking about, if that's helpful.
No.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, Commissioner Kealoha?
Was this the testimony that we heard earlier? This is the parcel of the testimony that we heard earlier that they were acquiring new land.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we got a handout at our last meeting that has a printout showing the TMK on the aerial.
I just have a question.
Go ahead.
I agree that we need more industrial, and I really like the idea of people being able to buy properties to support their businesses. But we don't have any, like, we could designate this or propose to designate this as industrial, but then it could be properties sold or it could just be rented, right? I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, at this point, it would be going off of what was represented to us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ducos.
So light industrial, was that the intent? Because that's not a designation in our community plan,
It's just industrial.
just industrial.
I believe so. Director.
Two things. So the answer to your question is just industrial. We don't have light industrial as a designation in the community plan anymore. It's employment center if you'd like to do that. But so I understand Mr. Hopper is trying to unmute and they cannot hear him. So if we can get help for him. Perhaps, Mr. Hopper, you could call in to the meeting. That might be your other way. And I would really appreciate him weighing in from the legal perspective on this.
Yes.
I was going to have a clarifying question.
And can I ask a question while we're waiting?
Sure.
So there are a lot of comments from the community that say, you know, they go through this whole community plan process. There's opportunities to, you know, present your case for a rezoning or for, you know, project. And then they're concerned when people bypass that process and kind of sneak in at the commission level or maybe at the county council level. So can you just help if I had to respond to one of those people, how I would let them know that this is very different than that?
Hello? Hello?
Mr. Hopper, is that you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Commissioner
Yeah.
Ducos will come back to you. We'll let Mr. Hopper provide the answer to
Okay.
the first question.
I just wanted to make clear the motion. I think if you're going to initiate a Maui Island Plan amendment to the growth boundary, I think there's a specific process for that. That's normally, I think, initiated by the director or the council. The commission may be able to, but generally that would be a new proceeding that would be agendized, I think, as a public hearing, and that would come to you sort of in your ordinary course, or I guess you could take it up as a meeting, but there's a specific process for that. So I think at this point you'd be sort of recommending that happen. I know they talk about a concurrent processing in the 280B, but I don't think they intend as part of the agendized CPAC or South Maui Community Plan Planning Commission meeting that you necessarily do that. I think there's a specific process for that island plan amendment. And so I think you can definitely say, we recommend that, you know, the department / council initiate that process. But I want to look into that process a little bit more. I don't think as part of your motion, you can actually grant the recommendation for the island plan. I think you have to there's some noticing requirements that you have to go through. So I think you can take that action today, but just to be clear, it's not to actually do the amendment, which has to be done by council. It's, I think, to recommend the necessary amendment to the boundary in order to allow the proposed industrial designation to go forward. I mean, I hope that wasn't too confusing, but generally an island plan amendment has a process that goes through that I believe includes its own public hearing and other things that you'd still have to do. It could probably reach up to council, for their action by the time they'd be ready to vote on the Maui Island plan as a whole. But that's still a process that has to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. Just to make sure we're clear on what you said, the action to us would be to recommend that the director or the department or council initiate the Maui Island Plan amendment process.
Yes, and yeah, I think you could do that as part of this to say, we want this designation to be something that is not currently consistent with the island plan, and therefore, before council makes that final decision on what this should be designated, they would need to amend the island plan growth boundary if this is inconsistent with the growth boundary. That would have to be done before council could take action on this community plan designation if it's inconsistent with the current boundaries.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Hopper. Quick question. Because the property has not been finalized at this point, would we want to include a condition stating that if the sale does not go through, that it would remain ag?
I mean, I don't think you should be doing these designations based on sales or any of that stuff. I mean, you should do it based on what the designation should be. So if they're not, I mean, I don't think you should grant land use designations on like prospective sales in that situation. You would do it based on what this property should be designated regardless of the ownership.
That makes sense. I just wanted to clarify.
Yep, nope. Director?
Yeah, if I may, I'd like to address Commissioner Dekos's question.
Sure.
So I share your concern, and that's part of the reason why the planning department does not recommend moving forward in this way. We think that, we have a process in place for the community to be actively engaged and for folks to come and make their comments known to the CPAC. And in addition to that, we have a Maui Island plan process that designates urban growth boundaries. And I foresee a scenario where I'm very concerned that we get to the finish line for this plan and it's held up because we can't finish the Maui Island Plan amendment for just this one area. So it's one of the things, but to address your question, Commissioner Dekos, I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing. And as far as the department goes, our recommendation is that if there are land use changes or policy changes that the community wants included, they should start with the CPAC and have that conversation with the community first. And then, if that carries through planning commission, then great. So I don't have any answer for those folks because the planning department disagrees.
Okay, so just to clarify, this is somebody that is interested in a parcel, is in the process of purchasing it. They'd like to do something that is inconsistent with the zoning, and they're asking us to expand the urban growth boundary and rezone. Is that what's happening?
Director?
Just to be really clear about language, it's not zoning, it's community plan designations. I believe the zoning out there is agriculture. So they would have to go through a zoning amendment as well. So this would be totally new territory. So the community plan, what they're asking for is a community plan amendment from agriculture to industrial. And that is the motion.
Thank you.
Further deliberation, commissioners? Is hearing that, is there any modification you want to make to your motion?
What I was just going to say is that I would move to amend my motion to support the language that Mr. Hopper provided.
Okay, Commissioner Lindsay as the second.
I would agree. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, just for, well, Commissioner Kealoha first, and then we'll go back to Mr. Hopper.
I guess I just wanted to say that I agree with Commissioner Decos, in that the potential future landowner should go through the process of community engagement rather than through this process. And I also agree with the department, so I would not support the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Kealoha. Anybody else want to weigh in on this? Commissioner Decos?
Yeah, just to further, I think it's opening up Pandora's box a bit here. I'm a little, I do have concerns with just this sudden major change in the requesting an island plan change and then based on a testimony. So I won't be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Decos. Commissioners Hippolito, Vice Chair? No comments? Okay, so Mr. Hopper, just for everybody to be clear, can you maybe restate what the motion would be or is?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, there's a process. It is discussed in the plan or in 280B that you can concurrently process an island plan amendment. I don't think at the meeting today you can really vote to complete that amendment or not do the regular process behind that. So I think the best you could do if you wanted to go about it this way, and I'm not saying I necessarily disagree with the planning director on her comments, but I have to read 280B and see that they do anticipate that this is something that can be considered during the update. That you would, I think, you're doing designations in the community plan for all these parcels. And so for this one, you do the community plan designation. Because council can't act on that until they do an island plan amendment to the district, to the urban growth boundaries, though. I think you would be also stating that you want the planning department or council as applicable to institute the proceeding to make this consistent with that. And so that could happen concurrently at the same time. And the council get both your recommendations. I suppose the council, once it gets the plan, can look at it themselves and decide they agree or disagree with you and decide to initiate it at that time. But I think the main point is, I don't think you can necessarily take your final recommendation on that without going through the regular amendment process for the island plan, which you can recommend be instituted by the department or the council. And the most important thing is that the council will not be able to designate this something that's inconsistent with the island plan unless they do an amendment to the island plan before finalizing this. So I think those are the key points. So I think your motion is to, as I think it was restated correctly, to recommend that the department or council, as applicable, institute the proper proceedings to amend the island plan.
Okay. Everybody got that? I guess one question I have about this, though, is that we've heard from the director that the department is not supporting this approach, which creates a little bit of a schism between the recommendation for the department to do this and then the department not being in support.
So
Commissioner Ward.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, since this is new and I think what would the process look like? I guess my intent was listening to the landowner, trying to help support the industrial business. So, but if there's a better recommended way to go that you would propose, I'm happy to do that. I'm just really trying to help move the plan forward, have it documented, and that we collectively say, yeah, that makes some sense. So I'm flexible. If there's an alternative way, I'm open to hearing it. I don't know what that is. So
Commissioner Decos has his hand up.
Well, I think there is an alternative way. It's the way everybody else does it.
Is that what you were going to say? Director?
Mahalo, Chair. Yeah, I would recommend that this project go through the normal process, which would be for them to initiate the appropriate amendments through the normal process. The alternative too, because if you do recommend the planning department initiate this, we don't have to. And the chair identified correctly that, this does create somewhat of a schism. As Mr. Hopper said, you could say, or the council initiate that. Of course, it would call on the council to act on this item before they, or concurrently with their reviewing of all of these items. So for me, this is a timeline issue. It's a major timeline issue for us. And while 2.80B, envisions that this is a possibility, it also doesn't give us a really clean way to handle it. It's not super beautiful and easy. So that's one alternative, is instead of saying the planning department, well, you could say the planning department, but I would also recommend or the council initiate it. And then again, keeping in mind that this will only go to council when the entire plan goes to council, and they would have to fish through all the recommendations unless we brought it to their attention earlier, to then initiate that MIP amendment. Anyway, the process as envisioned is that you fill in the urban growth boundaries. That's why the planning department has this position.
I feel like I should say thank you.
Yes. Having heard that, is there anything you would like to do with your motion?
So I would not want to take the opportunity for my fellow commissioners to vote. So I would say I would call for a vote if everyone's ready. And obviously you hear my position. I think with the discussion, I don't want to take the opportunity away from others if they feel that it's something that they want to do. But again, thank you for the clarification.
Director?
I do think that the motion needs to be addressed to address the issue that Mr. Hopper that discussed about recommending. So first of all, there's two parts to the motion: recommending a change from ag to industrial for this TMK, and also recommending some organization initiate an amendment to the MIP to change the urban growth boundary to include that parcel. So we just need that second part to be clear, whether or not you want to say the planning department or the council, or you could just say the council to leave us out of it completely. It's up to you. But I do think that has to be clear in order to address Mr. Hopper's comments.
Amend your motion?
Yeah, I'm happy to amend it to
Guys.
council. I know I'm not allowed, I can't do this, but like I would actually then propose that I just withdraw the motion.
Okay. Okay.
And if anybody else feels that they want to put it back out, again, I was really looking to not take away the opportunity, but hearing everything, I will retract my motion.
Okay. Thank you. Ooh, 7:00 has arrived.
Just need Commissioner Lindsay to.
Yes. Yeah, Commissioner Lindsay, the main motion. the move on has
Removed, that's
withdrawn.
fine.
Yes. And we are now at 7 o'clock, everybody. So we can defer this to our next, well, I guess not defer, we just leave this, close this meeting. And it can be on our next agenda.
You guys have finished everything for this sub area.
Okay.
Move on to the next sub area, and if anything bubbles to the top, you guys have another opportunity to
To
talk.
come back.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Chair, if I may, we will commit to talking more with Mr. Hopper to give a clearer path on this process, because this isn't the only time it's going to come up. There's going to be another item, I suspect, later on further down. And I want you guys to have real clarity on that. So Mr. Hopper and the team and I will discuss and figure out what this would actually look like and what a reasonable path forward is if you choose to do this in other areas.
Okay, that would be helpful. Yep, that would be helpful. Thank you. Okay, so can you give us a read on what you are thinking for our next agenda?
I think it would be beneficial to keep it to one sub area.
Okay.
Sub area 3
Sub area 3 and the areas of change
that match that.
that connect, like overlap with that sub area.
I think it's Central Kihei, the police station parcel.
Tech.
And now it's research and technology.
Okay, Director?
I just want to say thank you to the commission. I know this is a really long day. Every day in planning commission during a community plan update is a really long day. And it's even worse because Mercury is retrograde. And I just appreciate everyone sticking it out and working through this with us. We really appreciate you. You are, I don't know, just excellent citizens, like above average citizens. So thank you so much.
Don't broadcast that.
So yes, thank you, commissioners, very much. I am very grateful for serving with the grouping of you, and thank you for being here. And if anybody online is watching, we have 2 seats open and you can join us. We don't bite. So with that being said, we will see everybody on December 10th. With our homework done, and we'll be ready to be productive. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening, and aloha la kuoko'a, aloha la ho'omaikai, ahi ho kako. No.
Tell us what the process is. We need withdrawal.